Hey, folks. I am just trying to see if everything works. Tell me in the chat if you can see and hear me all right. I'm still trying to figure out this live stream thing and make it all work correctly. So hopefully this is good. But like I said, I'm always a little nervous about stuff like this because I just only done this once before and I know I messed it up. Then Okay, thanks guys. It's live, all good. Hello from Germany. Okie doke. So I guess you can see and hear me. I am going to try to do, because it seemed to work out pretty well, what I did last time. And I've got a bunch of questions that people had submitted that you wondered either through YouTube or Odyssey or MeWe or whatever, and I made myself a list. So you're going to see me reading here for a bit. I'm trying to adjust that so I can see this and see my questions. So I'm going to try to go through that list of questions first, and then get to any that you guys are asking right now. And before that, I wanted to ask, before I forget, this is a calendar. I know it's crazy. We're already in November. It seems like this year just started. I made myself one of these kind of as an in memory of my time in the tiny house up in the old clearing. If you're new here, welcome. I've lived in two different spots now, basically, in this tiny house. But I went through and, picked photos for each month. That's January. That's May. Just all some of my favorite shots from the years I lived up there in the clearing, since I'm not there anymore. And I thought, a few of you guys might like one of these too. I think I would have time, never done this kind of thing, to get some more printed, and that's when it was really snowy, and mailed to you before the new year, maybe even before Christmas. Um, it's not real cheap to to bulk print. Even, I mean, even bulk, I'm assuming it would not be very many, but calendars like this, if some of you guys would be interested in purchasing something like this, or I don't know, donating to our little homestead and getting one of these or something like that, I'd have to figure out how to make that work. But if that would interest you and you would like something like this for yourself, or as a memory of the years of, watching life up there or whatever, just a pretty calendar, real basic, calendar pages stuff, with the holidays and so on marked. I don't know if you'd be interested in that. It would probably, by the time I got it printed and then shipped it to you, it'd probably have to cost like at least $45 a calendar, which sounds crazy to me. And that only would leave me with like making a couple bucks to cover the time to do it. If that's something that would interest you, let me know. I don't know if anybody'd be into that or not. Okay, so that out of the way, laid that there so I wouldn't forget it. And I was racing around this morning. I should have said I wasn't doing a live stream till 11. Somehow I didn't get everything done. Anyway, it's a beautiful winter day outside. By beautiful, I mean it's snowing lightly and totally overcast. We haven't been above freezing now in 4 days or so. We've had temps down close to zero overnight, and it's got up to the teens most days for a high. Anyway, so it's a good day to do inside things. And okay, let's start right in on the questions, because I know this last time this went on for like 2 hours. Welcome to everybody who is here. And well, it looks like, I don't even know how to see. Oh, it looks like over 100 people are here watching. That is awesome. Okay, questions I have. Some of these I got very close to duplicate questions for multiple people, so I tried to only put one of each question in the list so I could get through the list. So if you ask the same thing and I don't mention your name, I apologize. I was just trying to condense it to be efficient. Somebody wondered if I sell any of my goods at a market or somewhere. They'd imagine I could get a lot of sales for the stuff that I can. No, that's a possibility. Wyoming has pretty good cottage food laws. I could do such a thing if I wanted to. I was racing around, didn't get my camera adjusted nicely. Anyway, So it would be a possibility. It's not something I currently have the time or interest in doing. Everything I can or ferment or freeze or dry or whatever is just for our household use or whenever we have, friends and family over for a meal kind of thing. Um, what do I put in the bird feeders? Uh, this person just refilled theirs with black oil sunflower seeds, etc. Yes, usually when I'm filling the feeders, I put in just plain black oil sunflower seeds. That seems to, at least in my area, attract a really large variety of birds. I've got had them flying back and forth all day. I had some mourning doves out there a minute ago, and so on. When I was up in the clearing, I got lots of chickadees and nuthatches and various grosbeaks and such. So of the bigger seeds, I usually do black oil sunflower seeds, and then if I'm feeling really luxurious, I'll buy some of those. They're not thistle seeds actually, usually anymore. They're called Niger seeds or something, look like little thistle seeds, because several of the finches really, really like them. So I have a feeder just for them. They're a little more pricey. I don't always uh, get them for them. But if I don't do just sunflower seeds, I do some of those thistle seeds. If you see something else in a picture in the feeder, it's because I ran out of sunflower seeds and I just gave the wild birds a scoop of the same grain mix that I make for the chickens, because I think I had that in one picture where I had some oats and barley and wheat and stuff mixed in with the sunflower seeds. But that's not what I normally feed the wild birds. And I find I do get more just house sparrows with that, and less of a, because they seem to like some more of those grains better, less of a variety of the wild birds, which I'd rather have. Somebody asked about the beehives. Is the beehive box insulated? Yes. We have 3 hives on our property right now. We've got 2 colonies that made it going into winter. We hope they will all be alive in the spring. But their little hive box is built pretty much like the tiny house. It's got an outside wall. It's got framing with insulation. It's got an inside wall. There's an inch and a half. These walls are 4 inches thick. There's an inch and a half thick with wool insulation in between, and if you watch the video of winterizing the hives, how we added way extra insulation up in the attic space for the winter. So yes, they're well insulated. Got lots of questions about honey. What does my honey taste like? This was from KB. Clover, wildflower, dandelions. I've had very distinct honey flavors over the year from something that was kind of all harvested off one thing, all wildflowers or all alfalfa or such. I'd say ours tasted like just a really good mix. I think our bees spent most of the summer getting a wide variety of things at different times of year. And so I can't say I can pick out in our honey harvest this year any particular distinct flavor. It's just a big mix. Do you have to, sorry if I mispronounced anybody's name, Ninad G, do you have to vacuum seal the honey jars? No, honey will store. I got quite a few questions about storing honey. Honey will store indefinitely. Honey has been pulled out of, as long as it's pure, real honey, not adulterated, not with sugar mixed in, none of that stuff. It will store pretty much indefinitely. I've pulled honey out of the pyramids. It was, I don't know, 4,000 years old or something. It was just fine. Just somewhere that it doesn't get dirt in it. So just having a lid on it, that will do just fine, and honey will be fine forever. It can eventually crystallize. I've actually read some older beekeeping books where there was advice on how to get it to crystallize faster because that was desired. Now it seems most people don't want it to crystallize. I don't really care one way or the other. If it does crystallize, it just becomes little honey sugar crystals basically. And if you want it to be, you can either use it that way or you can warm it up just slightly and it will go back to being liquid again. My honey very often crystallizes here because often the temperatures in the cupboards and such are pretty cool, which is good for food storage in general. So a lot of it crystallizes, but no need to seal honey in any particular way. Somebody asked about the dimensions of the stairs behind me, Emile French. I don't have those off the top of my head. This particular drawer staircase that works like that was designed by Jay Schaefer, who designed a lot of stuff. I believe if you look him up, you can find his plans for the drawer storage stairs, and he has all the dimensions and such for that. So sorry, I don't have all those dimensions, but that's where you would find them. Off-grid homestead. Wyoming. How do you know how much the bees need and how much is extra? This is back to the honey. I did a whole discussion of that in the video on winterizing the hives when we harvested the honey, and that's kind of too in-depth to get into here again, but go watch that one if you have the same question. Ale asked me, what are the benefits of gathering snow against the home? If you've been here for any number of winters, you've probably seen usually a pile of snow up around the house, usually right up to the level of the window sills, basically, so I can still see out. And the benefit of that is it's excellent insulation. We have a very dry, fluffy snow. Like I said, it's been days since it was last above freezing. It doesn't get above freezing most days all winter. It probably won't be above freezing, other than maybe a few hours every now and then on a sunny afternoon from now till March. So dry, fluffy snow like that is excellent insulation. Even though the house is already very well insulated, it's like R21 in the walls, I think R30 in the floor and the ceilings. Just having that snow stacked up against the outside just gives that much more. And it looks warm and cozy and cool. Somebody asked when I was spinning the honey that the warm temperatures in the corner of the shop there by the stove are good for spinning honey. Is that also good for the onions? Onions, when you harvest them, you can go check out the onion harvesting video. They need to cure for some weeks. A lot of people do this outside or under a shed or somewhere warm. You want them to be warm, like 80 something degrees for a few weeks, so those outer papery layers kind of dry up and seal the onion in. I harvest mine right before it snowed and froze, so I couldn't do that outside. There was nowhere warm outside. So for several weeks, they had been beside the wood stove there in the shop to have room to be spread out and do that curing. Now they've just gone in the cool cupboard to store for the rest of the winter. A bunch of people ask, including innerpeacecoaching.com, what do I do with the cappings? That was the little wax lids scraped off the honey. I'm not really sure yet. You can chew that. It's like wax with bits of honey. You can chew it like a honey flavored chewing gum, which I did some of. And for now, it's just sitting in a jar. If I have time later, I may filter the wax out of that honey and actually use the wax for making an herbal salve or something. I just haven't got to any of that yet. And they also wondered how much honey do Clay and I go through in a year. I am not sure yet because honey is somewhat expensive to buy. I have purchased sugar for some things in the past bunch of years that I would prefer to use honey for. So this year we got about 3 gallons of honey, and I would like to just use honey for everything that I want to use it for, which is pretty much sweetening almost everything that we sweeten in the next year, to actually get a good gauge of how much we use in a year, because I don't know for sure. I know when I was a kid, my family, there was 9 people in the family, but we would go through multiple 5-gallon buckets of honey because my parents did use it for sweetening a lot of things. So I don't really know. That's one of my goals in this next year, is to get a good gauge of exactly how much we would normally use over the course of a year. So come back a year from now and I'll have an answer for you. Lots of questions along this line. James Parker said, it seems to me that we have more honey and garlic than 2 normal adults could possibly consume in a year, not to mention all the bountiful canning and harvesting in previous videos. So he's wondering, do we sell, gift, barter? No, I think I want to do a whole video talking about this, but most people don't. Well, we do give some stuff to friends and we trade some stuff with neighbors. If you follow on me, we traded carrots for apples to the neighbors who had a loaded apple tree, because our orchard is still really small and not exactly producing hundreds of pounds of apples yet. And of course, we have friends and family over and they eat food at our house. But in general, what we produce is just for feeding the 2 of us. I was trying to find some statistics. Like I said, I might do a whole video on this, but the average American adult at least eats close to 2,000 pounds of food in a year. So I think it was 1,996. Statistics I found for somewhere else in the world said about 1,500 pounds of food. I imagine somewhat that varies depending on how much processed food you're eating versus really heavy nutrient dense food. I'm not sure. I've never weighed all the food we eat in a year, but I'm sure we're somewhere between the 1,500 and 2,000 pounds of food in a year. And all total, the stuff we produced, foraged, harvested, hunted, raised, any of those things outside of purchasing in a grocery store this year, we produced close to a little over 1,400 pounds of food. So for 2 people, that would be less than half the food required in a year. So no, we're consuming everything that we produce, and we absolutely will eat all of our garlic. I mean, we replanted some. You guys probably saw that in the garlic planting video, but that's for next year. And otherwise, with things like garlic, yes, we eat a lot of garlic, and I am positive we will run out probably a little before we've got garlic ready next year. So we eat it. That's pretty much the answer. Christine B asked about how much initial investment would be needed for a fairly minimal beekeeping setup. Some of that would depend a lot on what kind of hives and such you want to do if you want hives. If you're asking about the kind of style we have, the insulated lay-in style boxes, if you purchase them pre-made from horizontalhives.com, I believe the hive itself is about $500, all made, finished, frames, insulated, all that stuff. If you need to ship it, that's about another $100 because it's a fairly big, bulky box to ship. If you live near Missouri, you could probably go pick them up in person from Dr. Leo, or on horizontalhives.com. He has free plans. You can build the exact same thing by yourself, and then the cost would vary depending on what lumber you had to buy, how much you could find scrap lumber, so on. But you could do it definitely less expensively if you want to do the work yourself. And then you can either follow his instructions, and if you live in places where there's more wild bees, hopefully catch a swarm so you could get your bees themselves for free and have a few $100, probably, maybe even not that much if you build it yourself, into a hive. Or you could purchase, if you're going to purchase a hive nucleus called a nuke, you're probably going to spend in the neighborhood of $200 for that. And that would kind of be and you're probably going to want to spend $25 or something on a bee suit and veil so that you can work with them comfortably while you get to know them, or when they're in a bad mood or whatever, and not get stung. So that would be a general stuff you would need to get started with a hive. So that could vary a lot, from probably less than $200 if you catch your bees wild and when they swarm and reproduce themselves, and build your own hive, to more if you want to purchase those things. Hopefully that's helpful. Carol Multier asked about the wax cappings as well. I already answered that. Do I harvest honey multiple times in a year? You can, depending on your climate and so on. I did not, and I probably will not, unless we have some hive going really crazy in the middle of summer and I think they're totally out of space and I would need to pull some honey out just so they have space to keep working. Our summers are short enough here. I think that's unlikely to happen. So I would say most of the time here for us, we're going to harvest very, late fall for us, the end of the year when they've kind of done all their production. We can see if they have enough, if they have any extra to spare. Do the bees create the wax cells naturally, or do you purchase it to put in the hive? That the bees make wax. They have little glands and systems inside their body to create wax, which is amazing. And they will build the cells. Most people, including myself, I let them do some entirely by themselves, will put what's called wax foundation. It's made with wax taken from the cappings or whatever when somebody has harvested their honey, and pressed into a little thin sheet. I've got a video about how to put those sheets into the frames if you want to see what that looks like, in there to start. And that's really for the beekeepers' convenience mostly, so that they make their combs in nice straight rows in your frame so that you can lift them in and out, because they make pretty nice straight rows by themselves, but not necessarily exactly where you would want them to be convenient. So a lot of people start with that little foundation, and it's just a thin sheet, and then they pull it out from both sides and make more wax and make all those little cells on both sides. So yes, bees do make wax, but often people are starting with the foundation. Some people even will use plastic foundation that's shaped like that. I don't prefer to use plastic on most things, including in my beehive, so that's not what we did. Sadie Josie's mom asked about the honey. Will we be able to use it all before it crystallizes? Do you just have to warm it up to make it liquid again? This would make an excellent barter item. All of that is very true. Yes, we probably, like I mentioned before, will not use it all before it crystallizes, because with our cold climate here, stuff tends to crystallize quickly, but that's no problem. I don't mind crystallized honey at all. If I need it liquid, I just warm it slightly, not boiling or anything. I don't want to destroy the good enzymes in there, but yes, if you warm it back up, it will reliquefy. It is not gone bad. There's nothing wrong with it. Lars Miller asked, is there any food that I can't grow that I wish I could? Tomatoes would probably be the top of that list. We like tomatoes, of the warm weather foods that we can't grow here, at least not without something like a heated greenhouse. Tomatoes are the one I buy a lot of every year from semi-local, like in Utah, where it's a little warmer and they are able to grow them. Make our spaghetti sauce, tomato soup, salsa, all that stuff that you guys have seen over the years. So that would probably be the big one. I would also love to grow sweet potatoes and winter squash, all the Hubbards and butternuts and stuff. They store well. They're amazing. And both those things also like warm weather, and they die when it kind of thinks about freezing, and it freezes all summer here. Clawbarilla doesn't read comments asks, is that enough produce to last you to a year without buying from outside? They're wondering how much space they would need to produce all their own fruits and vegetables, not grain and meat, etc., because they don't have that expertise. So once again, I think I'm going to do a video just about the amount of food a person or two people would eat in a year, because that gets into a big topic. But it did kind of address that. We do produce the vast majority of the vegetables and root crops and such that we eat in a year, but not even all of that. And yeah, and we produce 600, a little over 600 pounds of produce out of the garden this year for two people. Which leads to Joanne Wolf's question. And with such a tiny house, where do I store all the home canned produce so it doesn't freeze? So there's a video. Quite a few people ask about this as well. I have a video called Where Do I Store Food in the Tiny House? So go to the channel on Odyssey or YouTube or wherever you're watching and look that up. We'll go into a lot of detail on that. I just lost my train of thought. Where do I store it so it doesn't freeze? In the house, yes, because a glass jar, if it was outside, would freeze and burst in the temperatures we've had just in the last few days. Right back here, behind the stairs, is a cupboard. There was a lot of you couldn't possibly get that much stuff in a house. There are big, heavy shelves in there. They're actually the whole depth from there to the wall. I can put almost 160 quarts of food in there. Then there's also a storage loft behind the camera. Up above, there's a little cupboard up there. I store food in there. Occasionally, if you look back at old pictures, you've seen it. Canned goods overflow temporarily onto the bookshelves up above me, and so on. So I can get a good bit of food even in a tiny space here, and I have been doing for years. And of course, it doesn't just sit there. I mean, the minute we preserve something like that, we also start using it again. It's not just sitting there for some storage off in the future. As soon as there's no more fresh outside, we're using those things. So we're constantly filling and emptying jars back and forth. Gay Neil Hilton, I'm sorry. Love your videos. Your garden is beautiful. Out of curiosity, what are the wires you're using to hold up your row covers, and where can I find them or something similar? So for those frost covers that are on rolled over in a hoop shape over each bed, the wires, which look like a pair going this way with little bars every foot or so between them. That's actually called ladder mesh. It used to be used at least for tying concrete block walls together. So if you have anywhere in your area that sells cement block laying products, that would probably be the place to get it. 7-8 years ago, whenever I got mine, I was able to order them through our local hardware store. It was not something I had in stock, but they were able to order me a bundle of 50 of them. And I think they're I believe an 8-foot length, and so stuck into my concrete beds and bent over, that makes a nice size hoop cover. I've seen a very similar thing for sale in gardening catalogs. Usually, I'm pretty sure they're still buying the same ladder mesh. They look identical. Usually they're a shorter length and they're priced about 10 times higher because it's a specialty gardening product than they're priced if you can find them as a concrete building product. But I think because the differences in how things are being built, they do seem to be used less and less. So I'm not sure how difficult it's getting to find them from concrete building places, but that's what I've got. English Coach 3Ts asks, can you plant garlic from the grocery store? You can. If it may or may not grow. If it has been imported from somewhere outside of the States or probably whatever country you're in, that's what I'm most familiar with, it is often irradiated on the way over the border, to the idea being to prevent bugs and microbes and whatever from moving from one area to another and becoming a problem. So some of that may actually be infertile and not grow. If you have organic garlic from a grocery store that still has roots on it, that usually means it was produced within the country somewhere, and so it will probably grow. I have tried this. Most garlics sold in the grocery store, at least that I've seen, are soft neck ones. They have a pretty big head, but lots of little teeny cloves. They did grow. They didn't make very good heads. That could be my climate. If you live somewhere warmer, soft necks do better in warmer areas. They may be happy there. Hard necks do best here. So you can. I've never seen anyone get a really great harvest from it, but you certainly can. If you want to get good seed garlic or hardneck garlic, like what I planted, go to the garlic planting video. And I think in the first comment right under the video, I linked to the gentleman I got mine from. It's beautiful seed garlic. But yes, you probably could. It may or may not grow. Back on one of those videos, somebody asked about Velcro catching a rabbit at the start of the video. No, she didn't. That was Velcro and Zipper chasing each other. They like to play with each other. We do have a few rabbits. I never ever see them in the summer. We have snowshoe hares. I actually saw one this morning take off through the horse pasture beside us, looking like a little white ghost. It's fully white now, bounding through the snow. I don't know where they go in the summer because I never see them in the summer. I see them a handful of times in the winter, but they never seem to come through our fence, so they're not on our property. Plus, a snowshoe hare is about 4 times larger than Velcro is. If you don't know who Velcro is, she's our one cat. She's a very small cat. I don't think, unless she found a baby, I don't think she could kill a rabbit. Trudy Schaefer said, I don't even remember which video this was on, yet another gem from Fineth. Great tip about the herbs. Oh, this was on cleaning out the chicken barn and redoing the bedding. She was sad when I scattered the tarragon in there because she's tried to grow it and with no luck, and we had gobs of tarragon growing here. She can't find starts in Southern Oregon. Any tips on a good seed source? I don't remember where I first got mine. I don't remember if I got it as a little start from like some pack of herbs in a local greenhouse or if I bought seeds. But if I was going to buy seeds, I would go to rareseeds.com, Baker Creek. They have a wide selection. I didn't double check, but I'm fairly sure they would have tarragon. Mary Reed and lots of other people on that chicken cleanout brought up, there was, I don't know, 90-something% of all the comments on there were about that I need to be wearing a mask because it's so dusty. So I cleaned out the chicken barn for the first time in a year, and their bedding was nice and deep, nice and dry. Several people asked too about the terrible ammonia smell. You don't get ammonia with chicken manure until the nitrogen in there, which is excellent fertilizer, starts to break down and it gets wet. It was not wet. There was no ammonia smell. There has never been any ammonia smell, neither when I was cleaning it out, nor any point in the whole past year, 14 months or whatever, since they've been in there. There may be some as it's breaking down in the compost, but it's in the compost and it's all absorbed into there. So there was no ammonia smell at all. I was not breathing dust either. I've actually been really sensitive to dust ever since I was very little. I have some allergies and hay fever and stuff. The day I did that, it was perfect. There was a light breeze that was sucking the dust all away from me as I poured it out that little muck out door, which did blow it toward the camera. So it looked really dusty where you guys were viewing it. And I probably should have clarified that, but it was all going away from me. I've done dusty jobs before, or dirty jobs. When you get done, you could blow those like dirt boogers out of your nose. When you blow your nose, they're brown. I didn't even have anything like that. It was all going away from me. And being so sensitive with allergies to dust and hay and such all my life, if any breeze blows, even when I walk past a fan, that's partly why I never have fans blowing in the summer for moving air around or anything. I've just like automatically, because I've been doing it for decades now, hold my breath, because usually those air movements move dust. Or if I step over like a running vacuum cleaner that always has the air coming, I just automatically hold my breath. I just don't breathe dust in. I do have some breathing issues. Wearing a mask is almost impossible for me to breathe through it all. We live at 6,300 feet above sea level, a little higher than that, and there's less oxygen here, and so I just simply couldn't breathe with a mask on. But I also wasn't breathing dust. So I'm glad you guys were all so concerned about my health, but it was not an issue. Timeless Christian hit music songs over the years. That's quite the name. Ask if I have a video that shows how I safely vent the pipe through the wall to the outside since the pipe gets very hot. This is about the wood stove over here. There's something called a wall thimble. So whether you go through a wall with a chimney pipe of whatever size, a little one like mine or a big one, or up through a ceiling or a roof, a wall thimble basically has whatever diameter your pipe is. It's got a spot for that. Then it's got a big open space, and then it's got some kind of metal box out around that goes up against your wall, your ceiling, your roof, your insulation. So it's making a dead air space what goes through there. If you look up chimney thimble, you'll find one and see what I'm talking about. That's how you put it, a hot pipe like that, through either a wall or a ceiling or any of those things. Linda Norton asks, watching the scene with the winds and clouds, could my little house ever topple over in the wind? I guess, could it ever? Possibly. You'd probably have to have a hurricane or tornado strength wind. We don't live anywhere near the coast, and we're too tucked into the mountains to be able to get tornadoes. The air simply can't get swirling fast enough, long enough here. That's why there's tornadoes in the Midwest where it's flat and open. We can get high gusts of winds. This house is heavy. It weighs, let's see, I think 14,500 pounds when it was dry. That was before stuff, dishes, books, clothing, wood stoves, battery bank, any of that stuff was in here. It's very, very heavy. It's not like a fiberglass camper that you tow down the road regularly. And it's sitting on 4 jacks. The wind can no longer get under it really and with any volume because of the planters all around it. So that's never been an issue in all the years I have lived in here, going on about to head into the 9th year. And I don't anticipate that it will be in this location. But if you lived in Kansas, that might be something you'd want to think about if you had a small house on wheels. Several people also, including Joanne the singer, said it hurt her heart to see me throw beet greens in the compost. She loves sauteed beet greens. That's from when I picked the last 2 wheelbarrow loads full of beets out of the garden the day before the soil froze. Yes, we eat beet greens too, and I actually like them. I should have mentioned that in the video. We just can't, we use them as we use beets and pick beets and such all through the summer. I just have no way to use up 2 wheelbarrow loads of beet greens all at once when I got to get the rest out because it's freezing. So those simply mostly return back to the garden to add nutrients for the next year. But yes, I am very aware you can eat beet greens. They're much like Swiss chard if you've never had them. I like them. We do use them. And then at the end of the year, we have a bunch that still go in the compost. Harvest Maid says, I've been trying to find out on my videos why the name Fineth. Well, this isn't too hard to find out. It's like literally the first thing linked under every single video. If you click that show more tab, it's a Welsh name for my nest. And I know I'm butchering the pronunciation. Several people have told me that. I don't speak Welsh. I don't even really read Welsh, but I've always thought the Old English languages like those are just unique. And I was trying to pick a interesting name for my house many years ago when it never occurred to me anyone would know or care or ask about it or anything else. It was mostly just for me, but it means my nest, and it's always kind of been that. Let me see. La Vagabond, Michelle Copeland said, I said it takes an hour. Do I need to fill the bottom a second time through the hour? Boy, I don't even remember which video this was on or what. Oh, I do. It was on one of the canning ones. On the steam bath canner, do I need to refill the water in the bottom under the jars? No, you can't. So that's why most canning times for a steam bath canner max out at like 45 minutes or so, because after that you would evaporate all the water, and you can't open a can or mid canning, add water and keep going. So if something needs processed longer than that, you would have to go with a pressure canner. And if you got more canning questions, I have a whole video called Canning Questions. I try to name my videos so people can find things that they want instead of like, she has all this fruit to preserve. You won't believe what she does next or something like that. I tried to label them actual things so that you could find what's in them. If you have canning questions, look for the video called Canning Questions and so on. If you wonder where I store food, look for the one called Where Do I Store Food and so on. Hopefully that's helpful. I try not to make it, interesting titles, but not like clickbaity, and where clearly when you click on it, you have some idea of what's going to be in the video you're watching. This was really interesting to me. Somehow a video I did almost a year ago about different chimney caps and dealing with blowdowns, where we are out in a more open area now than when I was up in the clearing, and so on, with the little wood stove, suddenly got like 200,000 new views. It's now the most watched video on the channel. It's crazy to me. I don't know if somebody else linked to it or something, because it's rare that a video a year after it's put out there suddenly goes through the roof like that. But anyway, I got tons of questions on things there, and I don't know. When you get a whole bunch of new people, you always get some rude and crazy people as well. But anyway, if some of you found the channel and enjoying through that, I'm glad and welcome here. But anyway, somebody quite a few people actually said that my problem actually that I was talking about in the video is being in a wide open area where the wind can directly hit the top of the chimney with a very small chimney and a very small firebox, force smoke to start going backwards when we have low pressure days. Like right now, it's snowing outside. We have an inversion. Like I said, we're high in the mountains, we're well over a mile above sea level. And right now, I know it's sunny up above us because every now and then I could see a little bit peek through onto a mountainside. But we have clouds that are, it's called an inversion because it's like upside down. The clouds are stuck down on the ground. It's gray and white out here. It is snowing, but we have such a strong down pressure that being stuck in the mountains, the cloud gets stuck upside down. It's bright and sunny and blue somewhere up above us, and it's not down here. And on high pressure days like that, where everything's pushing down, sometimes the wind would get the smoke going backwards in the chimney. I've got more about that in that video. Go look that up if you want. But they were explaining to me that my wood is not dry enough because it's not gray. If the chunks of wood are not gray, that it's not seasoned, it's not dry, and therefore that's why I'm having issues. That may be true depending on the kind of wood you have and the climate you're in. I should ask Clay to grab for me a chunk of wood to actually show you from my landlord's at the where I used to live in the clearing. They have a great big log house. They've since passed away. It was built 28 years ago and built with massive logs, and they were fully cured and dried. When they cut out a space for like a window or a door or something like that, those extra chunks of logs got split up to be their firewood pile. They don't heat primarily with wood, but they have fire sometimes. And their firewood pile from building the house, which people joked about, oh, you're still burning your house, has lasted 28 years. It has been sitting outside. What remains of it is still sitting outside in a heap under the trees, not far from their house, not covered, not anything. Wood stays dry here. It lights up like tinder. And unless it's the very outside edge of a piece that was like facing some sunlight, it's not gray at all. Our woods here, we live in a very, very dry climate here in Wyoming. At times in the summer, our like the whole forest has wood in it that is drier than kiln dried lumber. And the wood we're burning in the wood stove is from standing dead beetle kill pines, mostly occasionally dead aspens as well, that have been dead for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. They are long cured out and very, very dry. That's just not how it works here. But I just wanted to address that a little more detail because a lot of people have asked me that over the years. Oh, your wood just must be wet, because of something with the color or whatever. We have a dry climate. Stuff just doesn't change here. And that 28-year-old log pile is sitting there. It hasn't rotted. It hasn't decomposed. Nothing. That's one of the pros of a dry climate. Linda Leal, good to see you. Great info and thorough recipe for canning beets. Thanks for sharing grandma's recipe. Let's see, what was the question here? Oh, she watched me using the hand signal. I do this to tell Burley to shake when he comes in the door. Do I still use silent signals to keep those fresh in Burley's mind? Yes, when he was a puppy, I taught him both verbal commands and hand commands for most things. It doesn't really matter, if you're training a dog, it doesn't really matter what the command or the hand signal is, as long as you know what they mean and you do the same thing every time. So he knows, lay down is this. He knows sit is that. He knows this is shake off, not like shake hands, but like shake all the snow or water off of you. We practice that a lot in the summer. He's very good at it. He knows if he fetches a stick out of water, that I will tell him to stop and shake off when he's still several feet in front of me so he doesn't soak me. And then he brings the stick back to me and we re-throw it again. So yeah, we do have hand signals for most of those things. And I use the verbal commands or the hand signals. He knows either one and it works great. Depending on the situation, whether it's noisy and he couldn't hear so well, or whether it's really quiet and I want to stay quiet, like tell him to lay down quietly because there's a moose or something I want to photograph without spooking. So yes, we do that. That was him shaking the table as he just readjusted. He likes to sleep right under the table when I'm here working on the computer because he's a cuddly little boy and he's right by my feet. James Cochran said, this was on beets. My cans store-bought come with a juice that will stain anything. How come my hands aren't stained red when I was pickling beets? because I was keeping them in the water the whole time, I was just washing the beets off as I rub the peel off and as I chop them. That will pretty much keep that red from settling on your hands long enough to stain them. If you don't want to do that, you can also just put on like rubber gloves, or you can just have your hands be bright pink for a while. But yes, the beet juice will stain just about anything. Um, Pascal Lapus. So nice to see Clay and I enjoying all the hard work. Have I considered making a second channel of just nature videos like that one for cat owners to put on for their cats? This channel has a handful of cat fans. I've gotten pictures of some of them watching videos over the years, and I think that is awesome. His cat, or their cat, I'm not sure. My cat only sits still to sleep, and she sat down and watched the entire video. I think that was the one of kind of the fall wrapping up and starting to turn into winter. No, I don't have a separate channel just for that. I need to do a little reorganizing on some of my playlists on both Odyssey and YouTube to be sure things are all in there. Neither place makes it super easy for me to do that. But I tried to make a playlist called just relaxing videos. And those are the ones that aren't like, here's how you grow carrots, or here's how I canned beets, or here's cleaning the chicken house. They're the ones that are just nature or streams or just kind of the sights and sounds of the animals and wildlife around here. So I don't have a whole channel, but I try to keep those all organized in one playlist so you can more easily find them. Hopefully that's helpful. And I love that the channel has cat fans. Monica Carless said it was beautiful, the moon, the time lapse, etc. It's none of her business, but I'm curious because I assume she means Clay and I, look so incredibly well matched. What's the age difference? It doesn't matter. Just wondering. Clay is older than me. That is true. And we are very well matched. There's actually a fairly significant gap of several decades between us on, a calendar years. But I think part of the reason we get along so well is he grew up in a very rural, wild place in Wyoming. He grew up very close to where the clearing where my tiny house was parked for years. And I grew up in a very rural dairy farming community in Pennsylvania. But we happened to grow up with, like, even though it was in different years and different times, we grew up with kind of the same culture. I feel like we grew up at the same time. We grew up with the same kind of expectations, a lot of the same, not everything, but a lot of this very just similar cultural or household or whatever things. And we just get along really well, and it's awesome. A lot of people said something like Ronald Garnes here on the relaxing ones that of the nature sights and sounds. And those are one of the most time consuming to make because they're usually made of many, many clips that I have to collect over quite a few weeks of, the flowers and the bees and the snowflakes coming down, just all that stuff. They are one of my favorites and fun to do, but they are also one of the most time consuming, but lots of people seem to love them. So I'm really glad I can share those, just some of the beauty and stuff that I enjoy getting to see every day with you guys. But Ronald said my blood pressure went down, my attitude went up just watching and listening. Thank you. So I'm glad I can share that. Leslie Smith had asked, can we get a duck update? Looks like we've got a lot less and they're all female. So she had asked that before I just did the duck update, whenever that video came out a couple days ago. But yes, we ended up with, of our 15 ducklings this year, we ended up with 13 girls and 2 boys, and that was more female ducks than we were planning to have around. So we did sell, 4 girls went to one little place nearby and 4 went to another, and so now we have 7 ducks here, and that's about the proportion I was trying to get in the first place. So those girls are off on other farms doing their duck thing there. Christine B said they know that they thought it was a red-tailed hawk as a threat to the birds, but so gorgeous. There was somewhere in that one video a clip of a hawk sitting on our fence line. We do have a lot of hawks fly over. I think as far as our adult chickens, and definitely the ducks, which are heavier yet. Throat gets dry here. I think most of the hawks are now the birds are too big or the hawks are too little for them to be able to pick up and carry away a chicken whole. They could kill one and eat it on the ground, but Burley would have something to say about that. He watches the sky like a hawk and chases off any big birds that come over. We do get eagles that come over sometime. They could certainly handle carrying off a whole bird. They never have. He doesn't let big birds get close to the ground at all. And probably some owls could, but at night they're all inside with the doors closed, so an owl couldn't get to them. And it is fun to watch the hawks, and they hunt rodents, and I don't generally mind them being around. Um, Another question about the ducks, but I already just addressed that in the duck update video just a couple days ago. So if you didn't see that, go check that out. And another somebody asked about the genders of the ducklings we raised, as well as the tally from the clutch of chickens that hatched here this spring. So the ducks, we had 15 ducklings hatch and got 13 girls and 2 boys. And with the chickens that Mama Blackie had hatched, the Icelandic chickens, we ended up with 6 hens and 3 roosters. So that was our totals for the year. I don't know if that was just a coincidence that we happened to get more girls than boys on both batches this year, but it was awesome. Rosa Almas asked, what supplements do I take during the winter? I'm not a doctor, just to be clear. All I could tell you is things I do. I don't really do anything different in the winter versus the summer. I do regularly take some magnesium as a supplement. We have very, very hard water with, which is generally good for you, but it's a high amount of calcium. And whether you're taking calcium, if I was taking calcium supplements or anything like that, you'd want to, your body uses both together. So you want to be sure you have plenty of magnesium. And a lot of other things I only do if I feel like I'm coming down with something, like the drinking the fire cider recipe you guys saw me make, or making the ginger brew tea, or whatever. A lot of those things I kind of do as an extra boost if I feel like my body's fighting something extra, but they're not things I do every single day. Tickle Maybelly asked about how we keep the hawks or foxes from getting to the chickens and ducks. So our entire property perimeter is fenced. We did that. It was like the very first, well, we built the bridge first, but it was like the very second project we did here on the property. And that was for multiple reasons. We knew we wanted our dogs to stay in and not risk getting hit on the road or chasing a neighbor's cow or something like that. Ranchers, understandably, will shoot dogs that are chasing and harassing livestock or wildlife. Burley knows better, but it just keeps our dogs in. It also keeps, like just this morning, I saw 2 dogs, I don't know where they live, come marching down across the field and around the fence line. They're probably lovely, friendly dogs, but I don't know if they would eat our chickens and ducks if they could get to them, because a lot of dogs will. And it's just nice to know they couldn't get in and do that. So from the start, we wanted a fence that would keep other dogs, which also keeps foxes and coyotes and such out, keeps our dogs in, it keeps the chickens and ducks in. Doesn't keep the kittens in. They go right over it and hunt mice in the grass on the other side of the field, but they're cats, so I can't stop that. But that does keep the most of the ground things. The only thing we've ever had come over it was a raccoon, and obviously coons climb well. What we've done is we have the birds all free range the property all day. At night, the chickens sleep in their barn up on their perches, and I close the door so nothing can get in there. And the ducks sleep on the ground, but they're in their yard. And it also has a wire top and bottom inside, so nothing can get into them, and the door is closed on them, so no nighttime predators can get to them any longer. And we just, between the fence and Burley on patrol, Tana doesn't really patrol so much. She's getting old. She likes to sleep all day, but she'll back him up with barking at something if needed. But we just haven't really had, fortunately, much of a problem with daytime predators. Anne Blanchard said she's been watching for a long time and love your videos. I recognize your name, definitely. Thanks for all the time you've been around here. She loved this autumn one. She had a big question: are we getting married, or we have done that and not told anyone? She thinks we make the perfect couple. Yes, Clay and I got married back in, whatever that was, a little over a year and a half ago, before we moved in together on this property. We've known each other for quite a few years. We didn't have like a big wedding party for both of us. The point of being married is being able to spend your life working together on common goals and helping and supporting each other as a partnership and doing that. So we just had a very, very quiet little ceremony. But yes, we did get married before we moved in together here. Big Mama asked, when I drink it, what do I do with the berries? I believe that was on the canning the wild service berries or June berries. So I put the berries in the jar, filled it up with water. Usually when I go to drink it, I strain the berries out. You can you could eat them. You could put them on your cereal or granola or oatmeal or something like that. They don't have a lot of flavor left in the berry itself at that point because what you've done is leach the flavor into the juice. So often what I do, you could put them in the compost, certainly. I often feed them to the chickens. They love them. It's so funny. When I scatter them on the ground, they roll around like little marbles. Each chicken who gets one will like peck it and then put her head way up in the air and like run off because she doesn't want any of her friends to get her berry, which is just funny to watch. But you could do any of those things with them. You could eat them. They're just not super tasty at that point. But they make great compost or chicken food. Rachel Smith asked what elevation we're at or USDA growing zone. Like I mentioned a few times, we're a little over 6,300 feet above sea level. I guess that'd be about 2,100 meters if you're not in the States and using a more sensible measuring system. And USDA growing zone, we're about a zone 3. I've addressed this before in gardening videos. That has to do with how cold the coldest day is that you get in the winter. That does not tell you, so it'll say our area gets to the minus 30s in the winter. Used to get into the 40s below, sometimes hasn't. I've only seen that happen once in the last 15 years. It does not say how long it stays cold. It doesn't say if you get that cold temperature for one day or 1 week or 200 consecutive days. We get it on the very long side of that. And so I've seen people say, oh, well, I'm in a zone 3. I can grow tomatoes. You probably can, because just what your coldest day is doesn't say whether or not you get freezes all summer long. We do. So that tells you some useful info, but not all of it. But we would be about a growing zone 3. Jonah P asked why don't I want to disturb the soils very much. They go through theirs thoroughly, adding more nutrients, taking out weeds, etc. That was on the onion harvesting where I talked about how I kind of cut off the roots to leave them in there. What I'm trying to do is imitate as much as I can what would go on the natural world. If you think about what happens in a forest or a meadow, every year stuff grows up and then it dies, whether it's grass that dies or whatever, dandelion, stuff like that dies and falls over on the ground, or whether it's a great big tree in the forest and its leaves fall off in the fall and it settles on the ground. Everything makes continual layers on the ground, building up from there, and nobody turns up the soil or rototills it or anything. And that allows the microbes to set up their little houses and move around and share nutrients with plants and make trades for sugars from plant root exudates. It allows the fungal strands to make their way through and connect things and be like the internet brain network of the soil. So I just want to mess with all that as little as I possibly can, which is why I try to imitate the way the natural world would do it by just adding my compost and fertilizers and stuff on the top every year. They get moved around some. I disturb the soil some when I pull a carrot out and stuff. The earthworms mix it, but I don't turn the soil all over. So hopefully that makes sense. Carolyn said something about, hello, my 2 comments have been deleted. If YouTube deletes comments, which they do sometimes. I know from when I was locked out of my channel and tried to make comments explaining what was going on, they said that was spam and deleted everything I posted from a backup channel. I don't have any control of that. I don't see it. The only time I've ever deleted comments are if they became, well, sometimes there's like the porn spam advertisement ones. I try to delete those when I see them. And otherwise, there's been a handful of times where somebody was making very, very rude comments to other commenters. Fortunately, I haven't had much of that in a while. I think maybe 1 comment like that I've deleted in the last couple of years. So if yours got deleted, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. Sometimes if they have any kind of link in them, YouTube will delete them. But I don't control that. If you want to make comments that aren't censored in any way, other than I will delete them. If you're being excessively mean to other people, go to Odyssey. They don't do anything like that instead of YouTube. Daniela Oneg, will I plant next year's onions in the same bed or will I move them around? I usually do a little bit of a rotation on the garden beds and just like, well, the onions were in this one last year. We'll just put them on this side this year and switch them. crop rotation probably doesn't matter much in a small, well-nourished garden. It's not quite the same situation as if you have a million acres of corn and a million acres of soybeans and do that year after year. But I do move most things around. The garlic, I do not. Garlic is one of those that definitely seems to do better year after year in the same spot. But yeah, the onions will probably be in a different bed next year. Marie S. would like to see a video on how I made the beautiful rustic looking planter boxes. Well, there is one. I think it's called Making New Planters for Around the Tiny House. So check out the channel, look it up. Clay built them out of reclaimed privacy fence panels somebody was discarding, and they are awesome. And I think he did a beautiful job, but you can see them go together and how that all works in that video. Escape from PA told me there's a puzzle game in the Android Play Store that has a picture of my tiny house as a jigsaw puzzle. That's cool. I love when you guys find this somewhere and send me a link or a picture or whatever. It's fascinating. I do sell through like a stock agency some of my favorite photos of the house, because I realized quite a few years ago a lot of people wanted pictures of tiny houses for different things, and there wasn't really any, if you want a picture of a cat, you can go to a stock agency and buy a copy you can legally use for whatever, you're trying to do, but there really wasn't any of tiny houses. So I get paid like 10 cents most of the time every time somebody buys one, but it adds a few extra bucks every month. So, but I don't, the stock agency handles that for me, so I don't know where all they show up. And, so it's fascinating when people send me links to like, oh, I saw your house here, or I saw it there. That's just fun to see. So that's cool to know. Share Bee asked about bee questions. Can I talk about the way of raising bees naturally and chemical free? Do I plan to do a video on rendering beeswax? How do I plan my garden for the next year? So several questions. I've talked a good bit about the beekeeping in the various bee videos this year. I probably will have another more in-depth one on that at some point. It's probably too long to get into on this. This talk's already, wow, we've already been going for like an hour almost. Probably too in-depth to get into here. But if you want more info on a lot of the people I'm learning from, because I'm still very much a beginner at this, I can highly recommend horizontалhives.com. Has the books Keeping Bees with a Smile and Keeping Bees in Horizontal Hives. I've read quite a few beekeeping books. Those are two of the ones I found most helpful. Michael Bush has a blog. I can't remember the name or the address for sure. I know I have it linked under one of my beekeeping videos. He's been a beekeeper for many, many years, and he's got a lot of helpful info on more natural beekeeping and so on. So those are lots of places you could find more info on that. Yeah, at some point, if I melt down some beeswax to make an herbal salve or something, I hope to do a video on that. And how do I plan my garden for next year? At this point, I kind of plant the same things every year because I've learned with a lot of trial of error what crops and what particular varieties of crops do well in our climate, what ones we eat a lot of, and so on. So other than just kind of rotating which bed each thing is on, I pretty much plant the same thing every single year. And I do have videos about, and I'm sure you've seen them because I know you've been around here for a while, but videos on how I pick what seeds and what varieties I plant and how I plan out the garden and stuff various years. But it's pretty much the same thing. You can find those under planning the garden and seeds for planting or something like that. David Z said, I'm a remarkable person. I'm curious about your family and upbringing. I guess I could do a whole video on my childhood sometime. I'm the oldest of 7 kids. I grew up in rural Pennsylvania in a conservative, not conservative in political sense. I always forget that people use the word that way because that's not how I grew up with it being used. A plain community, that would be like what Amish, Mennonites, Brethren, Hutterites, etc. call themselves. They would all refer to themselves as plain people. That's the kind of community I grew up in rural Pennsylvania. And if you go through the videos every now and then, you can see some of my family members who have visited or something like that. Linda Green said she'd like to know how to process birds for freezer camp. Do we have an elk this year yet? And beeswax processing. She'd like to see that. We got a bunch of questions here. So I might do a video on chicken processing at some point. I feel it's our second year of doing that. My parents did it growing up. I didn't really help. I was usually at work or somewhere else. Clay did it growing up, but it's been a long time since he did as well. I feel like we're still kind of getting our system down. Maybe by next year, I'll feel like we're confident enough to go through and do a video of this is what we did. This is our trial and error experiences. Um, but yeah, I don't have a video on that yet. Hopefully I will at some point. Do we have an elk this year yet? No, not yet. I think Clay's actually out looking maybe for one right now. We're hoping to put one in the freezer yet. They haven't been cooperating so far. And kind of ready to adjust the beeswax processing. What project are we planning on next? Cabin, greenhouse, etc. Am I still shoveling snow for people? And how do I get internet in the new location? Internet in the new location is still a cell phone based hotspot, and but it gets way more bars of service out here in the slightly wide open, just out from the base of the mountains than I did on the mountain sides, which is what allows me to do things like a wide live stream like this. Yes, I still shovel snow for some people, not all the same people that I used to, because we live a little ways from where we used to be. And as far as what project are we planning on next, as far as a big one, hopefully starting on building our little house, which we thought maybe we'd get to this year. And now it's winter and we didn't. So the earliest would be next spring. That'd probably be the next big one. Catherine Nielsen asked about how many ducks were male. I already answered that. We ended up with 2 boys, 13 girls. What would it do with the beeswax? Do I have plans to extend the area of garden beds next year or other plans for the garden? I don't know about next year. I definitely hope to. It probably won't happen next year. I think I can probably safely say that. I hope to eventually, as I've talked about before, we plan to build a little house on the property that's a little bit bigger than the tiny house. And once we have that done, and they wouldn't be in the way, I hope to make a bunch more big garden beds close to and around that, but it probably won't happen next year because best case scenario is we'd be getting that house built next year. But that is in the future plans. Chris Moore asked, am I still working at odd jobs? If so, what do I do? And ask about the beeswax as well. Yes, I do. My most consistent one right now is that I clean house for 1 or 2 houses every week. And then I do various other odds and ends at times. But that's my most consistent one right now is I do some house cleaning for a few folks. And it's usually relaxing. Most often the homeowners aren't home and I can just listen to an audiobook or a podcast or something and clean away and then get back here and be able to take care of everything at our place. Gwendolyn B. asks, how has my tiny house changed now that we share it with Clay and I? How do I keep from going crazy or cabin feverish in the dead of winter? We got a list of questions here, so let me address one at a time. How has it changed now that I share it? Not a whole lot, other than it's a little bit more snug. So that's part of the reason we hope to build a small house, that's a little bit bigger than this at some point. The loft I don't mind the loft stairs. They're not Clay's favorite thing. We've had to, since we're using the shower here now, which I didn't use for many years. It used to be my closets where I hung all the clothing and stored a whole lot of other products as well. Some of that stuff is now on a set of metal shelves and a rack in the corner of Clay's shop down there so that we have the shower space open to use it. But for the most part, not a whole lot has changed yet. But it will when we build a place that's a little bit bigger. Going crazy cabin feverish in the dead of winter, that's never been an issue for me. I just love winter, and I always seem to have plenty of to do between trying to catch up on videos and photo stuff that I wanted to get done all summer and never had time to, or finally writing some blog posts, to taking care of the birds and the animals and stuff outside, to going for long snowshoes through the woods. I never have enough time, and winter, other than that, I want it to be summer again so I can garden, always seems to go by too quick. So that's just not a problem. How do I extend my short growing season? What are my methods? You can watch a whole lot of videos over on the gardening playlist over the years of the main thing I do to be able to have a growing season at all, since we get frosts potentially all summer long, or freezes, or even snowflakes, is to use those frost covers. They're very, very heavy frost cover. I have several videos specifically on them if you look up frost cover on the channel. And hopefully we will eventually build a greenhouse here as well. What do I do to build and maintain strong immunity during the cold months? Try to get good exercise, good sleep, drink lots of herbal teas and stuff. This one you can tell from the tag was a commercially purchased one. I try to usually make most of my own from herbs and weeds and wildflowers and stuff that are harvested around here. For instance, I have a video on foraging for rose hips. They're way higher in vitamin C than oranges. I think like 10 times the amount it says. So do stuff like that and get lots of exercise and fresh air, whether it's outside shoveling snow or taking pictures or going snowshoeing somewhere. And that's what I enjoy doing. And Whitting asked, do I can all my extra produce or do I freeze and dehydrate some of it or put it in a root cellar or whatever? How do I decide which method is best for each type of produce? My throat gets dry trying to get through this list of questions. I can some things, I freeze some things, I dehydrate some things. Hopefully, one of these days we will have a root cellar under the house that we're going to build, and then stuff will go in there. As far as how I decide what method is best for each style, I see the sun is trying to finally burn through the inversion cloud there, and it's getting very bright there. I should pay attention to what my camera's doing. Some of it is how much space we have. I try to reserve space in the freezer for only the things that I really, really prefer, like frozen peas. I like best frozen. I don't really like canned peas. Dried peas are fine, but they don't have the same flavor as fresh ones. So I kind of make those decisions based on the space, what the particular item is, how we like it. I don't particularly like frozen cabbage, but we love sauerkraut and Christmas cabbage, so we make both of those things. So the decision there is a little bit different for every kind of produce. Owen asked about beeswax as well. So far, I haven't done anything with my extra beeswax. I only have a teeny bit, but I hope to do something. My first goal is to make some herbal salves with it. Elaine Farr asks, can I remind them how many acres we are on now? She really enjoys the channel. We're on a little over 3 acres here, so it's not by any means a big ranch, but it's a little more than, a little lot in a subdivision. Cassandra Reynolds says, how much honey will we go through this year? Is what the bees gave you enough? I doubt it's quite enough, but as I addressed earlier, we'll see over the course of a year how much honey we actually would use in a year if I use it for everything I want to use it for. Maureen said this is a personal question, but it might be helpful for some folks to hear your response. You have lost a couple beloved family members in the past year. How do you manage to handle the grief while still getting everything done on the homestead? I did a video and somebody had commented on her comment I saw and pointed her to that on something like dealing with grief and moving on. For me, I think, and different people for sure handle grief differently. And I've seen this with close friends and family members and so on. So this is not at all to say the way you handle grief is wrong or something if it's different. But for me personally, since that's what she asked about, I think just staying busy is helpful. Kind of the daily routine of I still have to get out of bed. I have to make sure the birds have water and food. I have to pull some weeds. I've got to water that lettuce before it wilts. Just kind of those routine, and even I have to put wood in the stove or we will be cold. I have to empty the toilet bucket now or we can't poop anymore. Kind of the manual routines of life, I just find kind of soothing and helpful for that. If you haven't been following along here, I had my baby brother was killed in a car wreck within the past year, and Clay's one daughter passed away from cancer. So we both lost family members that were close to us in the past year. But I think for me, that's probably the biggest thing. And having a good friend to just talk to about how you feel. For me, a lot of the times that's Clay. We are very good friends and we talk about everything. That is hugely helpful. That's, having a good friend, whether it's your spouse or not, is not something you can just come up with overnight necessarily, but having a close friend, and I've been blessed in my life with several good friends over the years to talk to is something I also find helpful. Wendy asked, would we consider other farm animals, thinking maybe some nanny goats? I've raised goats before. I grew up milking goats. I actually like goats. Clay doesn't. He had one very, very mean billy goat that somebody was a reject from somebody else, and it was mean. And I was like, well, that's not really a fair assessment of goats. There was a goat nobody else wanted, and there's a reason a lot of people don't keep billy goats, especially if you want kids and or milk. But we would both be on board with potentially keeping sheep. But with our 3 acres, which depending on the climate you live on, will be plenty for grazing. But with our climate, with our short summers, if we had anything bigger like that, we would have to buy a ton of hay because there's only a few months of the year where there's grass growing at all that's not under snow for them to eat. And so at this point, we've decided that it just doesn't make sense for us to try to raise any of those things here. We'd have to, import too much food for them. Maybe we'll change our minds at some point or do something different, but they're not in the plan at the moment. Cindy Man asks, what will happen to the bees during the coldest winter? They should hopefully be fine. Some bee colonies don't make it every year due to whatever reasons. Sometimes it's an obvious reason. Sometimes nobody really knows what happened. I don't know until spring whether our 2 colonies that went into winter will make it, but they should have had an excellent chance. They have a well-insulated hive. They both had very good queens that were where they had a good colony. They had young bees going into winter that were, hatched very late in the year that should be still fairly healthy and strong in the spring. They had plenty of pollen stored in there. They had plenty of honey stored in there. They should mostly, they don't really hibernate, but they do kind of, the bees all ball up in their hive and kind of snuggle with each other is how I think of it. And pretty much just kind of go dormant. They don't really do a whole lot unless sometimes you get a sunny day and that's warm. That doesn't happen much here that it would get warm enough for them. But in some places during winter, you get a sunny, warm day and they'll come out and take a bathroom break or clean something out of the hive. But for the most part, they just kind of snuggle and sleep till spring and hopefully they'll be alive then. Bees can survive in very, very cold climates, even colder than us. Patsy Cluting Lucas said they're interested in greenhouse or root cellar in the future. Love watching canning videos. Yep. As I mentioned, those are both in the plans at some point. Sue Silva said, do I water glass my eggs or otherwise preserve them? Is there a freeze dryer in the future? I'd like to play around with water glassing eggs. That's where you cover them in lime water and preserve them. I know of people who've done it. I've never done so myself. We have, over the last year, we've had really, really good egg production where I haven't felt any need to preserve them. And right now the ladies are finishing up molting and hardly laying any eggs at all. So maybe I should have. So maybe for next fall, I need to be a little more prepared and do that, but I haven't yet. Is there a freeze dryer in the future? Probably not. I dehydrate a lot of stuff, but a freeze dryer is very expensive and requires a lot of electricity. And so that's not likely something we're going to do. Penny Peace Cornelius asks, how does chicken and duck care differ in the winter? Chickens like to be dry, and as long as they are dry, they are warm. They like their deep, dry bedding in their house. They like being up on their dry perches. They don't mind coming out in the cold, but they don't like when there's things falling on their head, whether the things are rain or snow. They tend to stay in the barn on those days. Ducks like water, mud, and ice, and they will splash water everywhere, and they don't care if it's 30 below. And so the main thing is keeping the ducks and their water splashing, which is why we now have 2 separate yards for them, away from the chickens who need to be dry. But otherwise, they eat very similarly. Winter isn't any different than summer, and the chickens sleep up high on their perches and ducks sleep on the ground. But the water is the main difference. Chickens, they both need some water to drink, but chickens very sedately sip from their water and keep everything dry while ducks splash water everywhere if they have a chance. Faith and Hope ask about a picture I have of a bird with a salmon-colored breast and a head with a dove-gray body. Do I know the name of it? I believe if I'm thinking of the right picture, look up pine grosbeak. I believe that's the one you're thinking of. They're a very pretty bird. We have several different grosbeaks in the area, but I think a pine grosbeak is the one you're thinking of. Val Loves Nature said, hi, I know both Clay and I are very busy with the homestead and individual projects. Do either of us guys have a hobby that doesn't involve homesteading? Yeah, kind of. I mean, making videos for you guys is kind of a hobby. Photography is definitely a hobby, including wildlife photos that a lot of other people don't notice most of the time. I also enjoy hiking and backpacking. I love to read, though sometimes reading is about homesteading projects and stuff I want to learn about as well. That's probably my main hobbies. Clay loves to fish, um, and hunt and chill and watch movies together. He would probably do more movie watching and I would do more book reading, but we do some of both together. I'll read him books and we will sometimes, especially in the winter, we hardly ever get to it in the summer, but especially in the winter, we'll sometimes sit around watch a movie in the evening. I'm trying to think what his other main hobbies would be. He just likes to, I don't know if you call it tinkering, but he likes to, or if you call it homesteading, he likes to just tinker with little things. There's one little thing where that door handle just isn't working quite right, or this thing isn't just right. He just likes, if he has time, to just fix all those things and make it perfect, which is wonderful. Um, ZZYDDNY said I covered the topic a couple years ago, but now the location and situation has changed. What do we do for laundry facilities? I still have the same hand cranked little Wonder Wash and spin dryer. The caretaker cabin that Clay is in part of the week when he's at his job has a electric washer and dryer. So sometimes we're using them. My goal, it's not in the budget quite yet, but my goal is to get the hand washing machine that Layman's sells, Layman's.com. It's a fairly big tub with a hand rocker and a wringer. That's something that's been on my wish list for quite a few years. It allows us to do a bigger load of laundry. They're kind of pricey, but they're less than buying a new electric washer and dryer, and they should last the rest of our lives, be infinitely repairable, never require electricity or any of that. So I don't have one yet. You'll see a video on it if I get one. They've been sold out and back ordered for a while, and they haven't quite been in the budget. But one of these years, I'm going to have one of those. Jen Nelson asked how I heat the running water in the tiny house. I don't know if I ever did a video specifically covering that, but back in that back counter under the sink full of dishes I washed this morning, it's a tanked propane heater. It's not a tankless, it's a 10-gallon tanked propane heater. I believe it's a Suburban brand. I don't know the exact model. It would be a fairly standard one that's put in RVs. It's worked really well. It's been the same one for, going on 9 years here. I have no complaints. It uses very, very little propane, and I always have plenty of hot water for what I want. So that's how I get hot water. Somebody commented on hers and said, I wonder if she takes cold showers. In the heat of summer, I don't mind that, but no, I like having hot water for a shower. J.R. Kreiner asked, do I miss living in the old spot? They'd love to see it on Google Earth. There are some things I miss about the old spot. I would like some of our trees around here to get a little bigger, but I also enjoy getting to see them wide open mountain views, which I had no view more than a few feet from the house before. So there's pros and cons to both. I also, the biggest thing I probably miss is having like moose and mountain lions and grizzly bears in the yard, which is cool and interesting to see. But probably the biggest thing I like about being here is that we don't have moose and mountain lions and grizzly bears in the front yard. They're still very close. We are just at the base of the mountains, but they just don't tend to come. And before I was on the mountain side itself, and they just don't tend to come out here so much. And that allows us to have cats and chickens and ducks and grow an orchard and all of that. So there's pros and cons to both of those. So on the one hand, while I miss the big wildlife, I also am really glad they're not here because it wouldn't let me do the things I'm doing now. Damagran Hart said, will we be bringing more duck varieties on the homestead? I don't currently have any plans. I like our Swedish ducks. They're funny and they're sometimes a pain and they're cute to watch waddle around. I don't have any plans at the moment, but I wouldn't say never. Maybe sometime we'll have a different breed. Beverly Jones wondered, will I visit Wales sometimes in the future? That's highly unlikely. I don't like flying, never have liked the feeling of being trapped on flying. And since all the stuff that happened 22 years ago or whatever, flying is not really fun. I doubt I'll ever get on a plane again. I'm not much for being herded around and scanned and all that stuff. And since walking or swimming to Wales is unlikely to work, I probably won't get there. But it would be fun if I magically could teleport there to actually visit the country. QRS, do we plan on building ourselves a bigger house in the lot at some point? Do you think it will happen in the next couple of years? Yes, we do plan on it. We thought maybe we would get started on it this year, and we spent pretty much this whole year catching up on projects we hadn't got done the year before that we thought we would, plus getting a little cabin built for my brother. So it didn't happen yet, but the hope is to start on that at some point next year. And if I'm comfortable answering, do I make a living off YouTube at this point? Thanks, take care. No, there is, depending how many people watch videos and the time of year and all kinds of other things. Yes, there is some money that comes in from YouTube, which is greatly helpful. It allows us to save up for and buy things as we're, whether it's fencing or a new, washing machine or those kinds of things. But it's not enough to live on, which is why I do house cleaning and such as well. That was pretty much what I was doing when I was by myself. Clay also has a full-time job out caretaking other people's houses at the moment outside of the home. But it's helpful to have a little extra cash. Some months it's more and some months it is less. Lisa Cook asks, what is the general time frame you're thinking of building your brick and mortar home? 5 years, 10. The general time frame, like I said, is we're hoping to start next year. It will be a self-build. Clay has been a professional builder doing both residential and commercial stuff for the majority of his life. So he has the skills to do it. I have the skills to hand him things and do what I'm told. We neither one of us is interested in going into any kind of debt, so it will get built as we have the time and money. But the hope is to start on it next year. And if it was a dream perfect world, it would be done before next fall. I have a feeling that's probably not likely to all happen, but we'll see. Major Seventh asks, do I still have the doggy slingshot? And he'd like to see a tour of the shop. Yeah, Burley's little disc thrower launcher thing. You do have that. I can only pull that out when Tana's not around because Burley will bring them back to me. They're kind of a soft foam thing. He loves playing with them. It shoots them kind of like a Frisbee, but they're a round disc like this instead of a disc that flies that way. But they're somewhat fragile, and Tana won't bring them back. She'll just sit down and shred them. So we do play with that if it's only Burley and I. And a tour of the shop. The shop is kind of Clay's domain. Clay's very supportive of the stuff I do, like sharing lots of stuff with you about how to and how we do this and the sights and sounds. But he's also a more private person, and that's his domain. So I respect that, and I don't intrude my my sharing into that domain. Jen Nelson said she'd love another pantry tour, as the last one was in the old place. Like I said, look at the where do I store food in the tiny house video. Yes, we're in a new place, but so far we aren't in a new house, so the house is exactly the same. The only difference is that since we do have a shop now, was able to make some overflow of canned goods and stuff this year that are just sitting on a wire rack in the corner of the shop. There'll be a new pantry tour at some point once we build a new house with a new pantry. On that note, Linda Leo asked, how are we coming along with the house plans? Even though it might be a while yet, it's still fun to plan and imagine. I think several people asked something like that. Do we have plans yet? What kind of plans? Yes, Clay and I actually had come up with the house plans of what we would like long before we ever even purchased this property, with a few things that may have been adjusted depending on what exactly the terrain looked like on whichever property we ended up on. But yes, we know what we want to build. It would look approximately like if you took this tiny house, instead of making a rectangle, stretched out to be square with a bigger kitchen, a bigger living room back there. Probably bring the loft bed down onto the same floor level, so you would have a bedroom and bathroom on the floor, and a little square rectangle house, something like 600-ish square feet with a root cellar under it and a greenhouse on the side of it. That's the general gist of the plans that we have. We will we'll see how we get it built. Joanna K asked for a tour of everything that's stored away for the winter. Where do we keep onions, potatoes, root vegetables? Do we get an elk this year? Can I show you the freezer? Freezer looks like a bunch of bags of chicken and not many bags of elk left in it right now, and some boxes of peas. The rest of the pantry looks, I could do a new one, but it looks pretty much like that one I did a couple years ago, storing food. Some of the extra boxes of potatoes are down there in the shop, just sitting in a crate, looking just like they did when they were sitting outside here when you saw me pull them out of the garden. They don't look any different. Dorna asks, is there a supportive local community? Are we involved with the local township? Are the neighbors friendly? Yes, you mustn't follow along on MeWe because I've had a bunch of posts on there about we have awesome neighbors here. Everyone is very friendly. Neighbors is a long range. You consider people neighbors within quite a few miles when you live in rural areas generally, but our very closest neighbor that have a driveway close to ours, they're awesome folks. They traded us, like I said, apples off of their tree that was just overloaded this year. We gave them tons of carrots since we had plenty of those. everyone helps each other out. If you're out shoveling the end of your driveway, one of the ranchers coming by in his big tractor may just stop and may, as in this has happened to me, stop and say, that looks like way too much work, let me do that, and use the big tractor bucket to scoop all the plow berm, the road plow made out of the way. So yes, we have a great local community here. Sheila Bundren and several other people ask, are we planning on having babies anytime in the near future? We hope to have lots of little chicks hatch next spring under our Icelandic mamas. We'll see if we get an unrelated drake. Maybe we'll have some more ducklings, or maybe we'll just stick with the flock the way it is. We hope there to be lots of bee babies. If you're asking about human babies, the answer is no. Denise Jones said, that was another question about the age difference between us two, which I already addressed. It's a couple decades. Clay is older than me. Kickback Relax 28 said, does the bear with her cubs who used to visit Fineth in the old location still come around over there? How many miles are we from there? They like our old location more than the new one. Yes, that bear is still alive. Some of her batch of cubs are still alive, some are not. There is still grizzly bears, mountain lions, wolves, moose, elk, all of those things in that area. It is quite a few miles in a different mountain valley from the one we live in now, still in the mountains, still in Wyoming. And that's great that you love my old location more than the new one. It was a cool experience to get to live there for a bunch of years. The older folks who owned the place, who let me stay there in exchange for helping them with work on the property, have since passed away. And the property is actually for sale. If you have a spare about $60 million, you can buy it. That's one reason I'm not there. CG asks, what's my mindset or outlook that motivates me or gives me the drive to have fortitude to progress through all these projects? I don't know. When I read that, I thought, I don't even know if I actually have an answer. I guess my mindset is that I love what I do. I love most of it most of the time. I want to produce my own food as much as possible because it's healthier, because it's fun, because I like knowing what goes into it, because it is less dependent on big systems that are all out of my control that can fall apart. I don't know. It's just what I want to do. I guess that's my best answer. Berkeley asked, have I ever lived in a city? Nope. And I hope I did live in a small town at one point. It would have had about 7,000 people. I doubt that's what you mean by a city, but I did live in town for a little while before I moved into this tiny house with a roommate, but not what would normally be called a city. Catherine Starrett asked, what was the most challenging part of moving the tiny house? What advice would I give to someone who's moving it for the first time? Probably it wasn't really challenging. The most time consuming for me is because I don't move this all the time. When we did that one move in, 8 years, I don't have it set up to go down the road all the time. So I had to unstack books off the top shelf and move glass things off shelves and pack them in newspaper or whatever and on the floor because they would have all rattled off and fallen and broken and such. So that wasn't necessarily a big challenge. It was just somewhat time consuming because I don't have the house set up. I have friends who travel regularly in their tiny houses. They don't have glass dishes high on shelves that are unsecured because that would be a pain. Advice if you're moving one for the first time, if you're talking a tiny house on wheels, I'd say just make sure you double check the structural integrity of the trailer you're on, the quality of the tires you're on, and the axles. I've heard of a few people moving a tiny house who had an axle break under it due to the weight. Often those were built on some kind of reclaimed trailer with an axle. It was probably a little too lightweight for the amount of weight of house that got built on it, but you can't just unload your house like you could unstack hay bales off a trailer in order to fix a broken axle. So that's a pretty big deal. Jen Nelson asked one more question. Have I monetized the channel? Can we support ourselves with the channel? Do you have any tips or advice on that? Yeah, I addressed that a little bit way back. I didn't even know what a YouTube channel was. I took pictures and I wrote blogs and I was trying to answer some questions I didn't have answered and thought if I was going to learn the hard way, I may as well help somebody else learn that way. And at that point, I didn't even know a YouTube channel was a thing. I was just trying to figure out where can I put this. Oh, my camera can take videos too, not just photos. Photos have always kind of been my thing. Where could I put this clip of a video because it's easier to show how to do this thing with a video than a photo and a written description. And it was like, oh, there's this site called YouTube where you can just upload it and people can watch it, and then that'll let them see what I'm trying to explain. And then one day YouTube popped up this little thing of like, do you want to monetize your channel? And it's like, oh, cool, whatever that is. And just clicked yes. The rules have all changed, I think, for that since then. And then for a little bit, it was like, oh, that's neat. I earned like 3 cents last week. That was awesome. Anyway, it's gotten a little bigger and a little more than that, but no, it's not enough to support us. It's enough to be an extra blessing and helping get things built and projects done around here. So we appreciate that. If you're looking for advice to like try to support a money making or to start a money making channel with that as the goal, there are people out there who address that. That wasn't what I started or what I tried to do. I try to share info, and if enough income comes in to allow me to keep having the time to do that, that's awesome. So running a money making channel or trying to get it to grow or to be real popular, I just try to put the info out there in a clear way so anyone who wants to find it hopefully can. I think there's probably better people for advice on how to start a profitable channel if that's what you're looking to do. Vanna Muckalak, I'm sure I butchered your name. My apologies. Wondered if I have a good refried bean recipe, jerky recipe, and how is the spring water, the water from the spring filtered, if at all? I've never actually made refried beans. We cook bean soup and various other things. I don't tend to make refried beans, so no, I don't have one. I'm sorry. Jerky, we've done elk jerky. I've never done a video on that. Maybe I will if we do get an elk this year. We both prefer the ground meat version instead of taking whole slabs where it's stringy. It gets stuck in your teeth when you eat it. Like grinding the meat, mixing a seasoning mix in, and then putting on the dehydrator using like a jerky gun, they call it, or it squirts it out in a long, thin strip and dries that way. I don't even think we have a jerky recipe. One of Clay's good friends who makes a lot of elk jerky and sausage and such gave him a bag of his custom mix that I think is a family secret, and we used it, and it was awesome, but I don't have the recipe for it. And the spring water is not filtered. We have excellent, clear, beautiful, hard, full of minerals water that springs right out of the mountainside above us, and we do not filter it. Our Nord says they know I downsize a lot with minimalist chips on your channel. Does Clay also try to be a minimalist? How has living with two affected that aspect of the tiny house homestead? I am almost at the bottom of this list of questions, and I get to see what all you guys have been chatting about that I've been ignoring this whole time. Clay and we're both pretty much on the same page. If neither one of us likes to collect lots of just stuff or trinkets or gadgets, we both like to have the tools that we need to do the things that we do. So for me, it's a lot of gardening stuff, canning and cooking stuff, photography stuff, backpacking stuff. For Clay, it's a lot of, all the tools to build things, how we build our chicken house and working on the inside of the shop and building a house and so on. So we both have a lot of useful tools. We're definitely not like, we each have one plate, one cup, and one coat, one shirt, and so on. But neither one of us has a lot of stuff. Clay might be a little. I'm maybe more prone to like collecting things that it was free and it might be useful someday stuff. And he's a little more prone to like, well, I have that t-shirt still that I had when I was in high school because why would I get rid of it? But neither one of us has a whole lot of extra stuff, but he does have a lot of useful tools there in his shop. The shop actually has room for me to store some of the extra canning, bulky stuff. So that's nice. Gordon and Roxanne said, is the house we're going to build on the property from plans, or is a unique design we'll create on our own? Yes, it will be our own design and built by us. And I described the design we have in mind briefly earlier. They also ask, will we be seeing the brother's cabin we helped build this past summer? Yeah, we're almost done. He's sleeping in it, which is a good thing since it's been below zero out there and it's got a wood stove roaring away. And there's some details to finish up, but if it's okay with him, I probably will do. I didn't take like detailed videos of every step of the process, but I do have some videos and some photos. And so if I have time now that it's wintry out, I will probably put together a little start to finish building a little cabin for him through the past year, but I haven't got to that yet. Julie Michaud asked, what age would we be swapping our Drake for an unrelated one? Do ducks become attached to one another? Any duck partners? our one boy that we do have here now is a full sibling to most of our hen ducks and the son of one of our others. So he's too closely related. We'd like to not have a full brother reproducing with our hens. If I could find someone else in the general area who had a Swedish drake, then they wanted to trade, I would. I'd do it now. I'd do it at any point if I could find that. That may not happen. I don't know of anyone else close by who has Swedish ducks, so we may end up having to just butcher him and buy some ducklings from a hatchery again to get a slightly more distantly related male. Sometimes I've heard hen ducks do seem to pick their favorite boy if you have multiple girls and multiple boys. Um, Ours right now seem to all act like siblings. Our one boy hasn't really seemed to realize, for the most part, that he's a boy yet. They all just kind of act more like siblings. Um, Ricky said he's been following me for years. Um, and he sees how happy and accomplished I am, and that leaves me without any questions for now, apart from how did I manage to find a like-minded mate? Blessings from France. I don't know. I got super lucky. I actually thought I'd probably be single most of my life because I've had lots of good friends and didn't think any of them. Well, the only one I wanted to spend my life with did not feel the same, so that didn't happen. Um, and I don't know how to in a rural area like Wyoming. How did I bump into somebody like Clay who's just awesome and nobody's perfect. We both have some broken edges, but we joke that our broken pieces all fit together really well and we just make a good team. I don't know. I don't even have that active of a social life where I like go out or hang out with people. I used to host a lot more people from around the world through couch surfing and stuff, but that's not how I met Clay. Um, so I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't have any good advice because I feel like I just got really fortunate and blessed. Beautiful Victory asks if you'd like to know if teeny houses are have become legal in Wyoming. They're looking into getting a teeny house, but the only state they can find that has approved teeny house living is the state of Maine. That's a huge topic. I highly recommend going and checking out Christian and Alexis's. I think they've got a 2 or 3 part series called "Living Tiny Legally" on their channel. Oh boy, why can't I think of their channel name? Not Tiny House Adventures. I'll think of it in a minute. Anyway, look up Living Tiny Legally and you'll find the documentary they did. They've traveled all over the country for thousands of miles in their tiny house. They came and visited me in their tiny house. They even have a tour of my house. I think it has over 5 million views. Last time I looked at it. But they covered this topic well. But basically, in very few areas is it a state by state level thing. In general, it's going to be areas that a few places have specifically created building rules or codes or something that allow for tiny houses. But in general, rural areas, places that are not subdivisions, not townships, not cities, and that preferably have little or no building codes where you can build anything you want. A tiny house is anything and you might want it. And so those are places. There are a few counties like that in Wyoming. I think there's one in Colorado. There's a couple in Idaho. There's a bunch in Missouri. And those are the kind of places I have personally looked at. I'm sure there are others around the country and places I haven't looked. But yeah, check out their documentary. They have a ton more info on all that stuff. John Tiger said, thanks for making sprout growing so easy. Can I do a segment on microgreens? I've never actually grown microgreens. It looks like a cool idea. So I don't have any info to share on that. I know lots of other people have done how-tos on that, but we do grow a lot of sprouts, which reminds me, I actually need to get a new jar started here now that everything's good and froze up outside. But we do all through the winter eat a lot of sprouts. My favorite mix is probably the alfalfa, radish and clover mixed together, but you can check out the sprouting video if you want to grow your own. That's very easy to do. Somehow I still have a fly in here. I'm not sure where they came from with the temperatures outside. But we do eat a lot of sprouts through the winter when we don't have all our beet greens and other things outside. Sis asked, where did I buy the tiny wood stove? You can find lots and lots of videos about my wood stove on the channel. Just look for wood stove. It's the Gray Stoveworks Mini CT12. It is the little shop that made it is no longer in business, so I can't send you anywhere to buy it. Sherry too said Ember did a fantastic job on raising her ducklings. They did. Do the ducks speak chicken or are they bilingual? And what are they talking about in those low duck tones? I have no clue. Chickens and ducks mostly seem to just ignore each other. The chickens do their chicken things. Since the ducks have grown up and are no longer listening to their mama Ember, who was a chicken, they clearly could understand each other because they listened when they were growing up to what she told them to do. But now the ducks do their duck things and the chickens do their chicken things, and they kind of just go about their day and mostly ignore each other. And what do the ducks talk about where they kind of mutter and murmur to each other all the time, their little conversations? I have no clue. I would love to know the answer to that if anyone can speak duck and interpret it. Pine Tree 282 said, "Are the birds eating similar to what the ducks are eating?" I think they were talking about the little house finches and sparrows and stuff that were pecking around the ducks. They were eating. I do some fermented grain. I've showed how in different videos every day that I give the chickens and ducks. And when I scatter on the snow, sometimes the little birds come in and try to peck up some of those seeds before our poultry birds get all of them. But yes, the wild birds like the same thing. Miranda Brooks asks, "How do I know which eggs you can eat?" I don't know if she was meaning, do you know which ones are duck or which are chicken, or you can eat any of the duck or any of the chicken ones. All of ours have been fertilized so far in the past, year-ish, because we have adult male roosters and had a drake. And if you're trying to ask how do you tell if an egg is good or not, you can do a float test. If you put it in water, a good egg should sink. If it floats to the top, it's probably gone bad. Or you can just smell. If you crack open an egg that's bad for any reason, we haven't got any of those, but a rotten egg smells like rotten eggs, and you're going to know the second you crack it open, it's no good. Kathy Salika Vanilla said she loves the ducks. Do they sleep protected but outside? Yes, I tried to get them to sleep in the barn. I tried to get them to sleep in their little duck hut, which is still there. And they're like, "No, we're ducks. We just want to sleep on a snowdrift." So they do, or on the wood bedding or whatever. They sleep on the ground. They won't come into any kind of structure. Hardly. They'll come in the barn and slop the chicken water all over, but they won't sleep in there. So now we actually set it up so they can't get in the barn because they just make it too wet for the chickens. But they never wanted to sleep in there anyway. They're just tough, but they are protected. They're in their duck yard at night, which again has wire on all sides, but so nothing can dig in or fly in or climb in and eat them. Tessa Alayans ask about what would a dozen duck eggs go for? Do we have a local farmers market? I don't know. I know a guy in Texas who sells duck eggs for, I think, even a couple of years ago, before egg prices kind of went through the roof. They were selling them for like $10 a dozen. Organic, free range, soy and corn free eggs. And they had more customers than they could possibly supply, and they had a lot of ducks. I've never tried to sell duck eggs here locally. We don't have much of a local farmers market. There's such a short summer season, and pretty much everything people can grow here, if they want to grow it, they're growing it themselves, because there's a lot of little farms and ranches and so on. So there's just not a lot of people who would shop at a farmers market, so there isn't much of that. Let's see. Last question. How Wyoming off-grid homestead ask, how do I know how much honey is extra that can be harvested versus what is needed for the bees? And do I harvest propolis or pollen? Again, check out the winterizing the beehives video where I went into that in depth. So that was my list of questions folks had asked me before. And now let's go through the chat here. So if you have a question right now that you want me to answer, and you're here live, it looks like, we've got almost 250 people, and we've been here for nearly 2 hours, an hour and 41 minutes. That is crazy. So glad you guys all got to hang out. It's fun to try to answer questions this way, because if I sit down, I tried for years to like type answers to every single comment I got, and it was taking like more than 4 hours a day every single day, and I just couldn't get to all of it all the time, and I felt bad about that. So hopefully this works now. We have a little stronger internet connection. We can do a live stream like this to get a whole bunch of questions answered and make that work. So I'm rewinding through the chat, but if you got something you want to ask me right now, it's also helpful if you put like at least the first word or two in all caps so I can find that it's a question real easily. But I'm going to go through here. It's good to see you all. Thanks for some of you guys even showed up early and we're waiting. Set your oven timer. That's awesome. Hi to the Netherlands and Texas and Mississippi Gulf Coast and Boise and England, and wow, somebody who's Dutch in the UK, Southeast Wyoming. Man, we got Got all kinds of people. That is awesome from all over the place. Somebody asked, do I ship overseas? I'm not sure what they were talking about shipping. I don't. Oh, they might have been talking about the calendar. I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I have no clue what that would cost if you wanted a calendar shipped overseas. If you weren't here at the beginning, I was asking if I printed myself a calendar in memory of, some of my favorite photos over the years of living up in the old clearing and so on. If that's something you would be interested in, it would have to be a little bit pricey to get these printed on the, nice photo paper and mailed to you. Let me know. I don't know. I could look into that to see what it would cost to ship to the UK. Because I don't know the answer to that. Let's see here. Several people said they would like a calendar. Oh, sorry, North Star Prepstetter. Kathy, I wasn't watching. Click on the 3 dots to the right of me to make you an admin. And I was thinking at that earlier that I was going to do it. Add moderator. Okay, sorry, it's probably too late to be helpful that I'm just doing it now, but you are a moderator. Thanks for being here, Kathy. I should have been paying attention earlier. I just knew if I got distracted reading comments at the same time, I would never get to the list of questions I have. Hi to Toronto, Canada, and Eastern Wyoming down by Cheyenne. Will there be a cabin build in the spring and a greenhouse? I guess I kind of answered that. Do I have a BF? I don't know if they mean boyfriend or best friend. I have several good friends. I've been blessed with several good friends, and I have an awesome husband. Thanks for all the kind comments. I guess I did address when we might start building a home. Was a water feature something we always wanted on our land, Brandon Young? Water feature would be nice. We definitely a good, reliable supply of drinking and garden watering water and animal watering water. Some reliable water supply. That was on our deal breaker list on a property. If we didn't have that, we weren't going to buy the property. Hello to Oregon. Kathy, I was not live on any other platforms. I need to figure that out at some point. I think maybe I'd have to buy some kind of streaming software to make it go to more places. I haven't looked into that a whole lot because I'd love to be live on Odyssey and Float and stuff at the same time. I'm not on Facebook or anything anymore, so it wouldn't be there anyway. Hello from New York. Do I smoke weed if I get bored? I'm pretty sensitive to any kind of smoke in the air as well as dust. So even if I like that, I'm sure I couldn't ingest it through smoke. Yes, I was reading questions from that people had submitted. I had put a post on MeWe, on Float, and on the community tab on YouTube and Odyssey almost a week ago asking for questions, and that's where the list came from that I just read through. So in the future, if you want to have your questions on that list, follow me on one or more of those places and watch out for that. I'm going to try, I hope, to do a live stream Q&A like this maybe once a month through the winter. In the summer, I get too busy and I just don't get to things. So I know that already about myself. But hopefully we're going to do this semi-regularly through the winter. But that's where those questions came from. They were ones people had asked me over the past week, and I put them all together in lists so I could get through them all. Oh yeah, I see Jamie answered that question. And yeah, I'm glad Cheyenne Urban Gardener, you subscribe to Kathy. She does awesome stuff. It's also getting back to winter where I can finally sit down and catch up on what some of my other favorite people have been doing, because all summer I don't have time to watch anyone's videos. So it's fun to do some catching up here when we have little longer evenings. And so on. Major 7th said Home Depot carries ladder mesh in Southern California. That's good to know. I had a friend who looked at a Home Depot in Montana and was unable to find it. So that may be different in different places, but that's a good place to check. Somebody else asked, Jenny asked about high winds. We did talk about that. Stevie Ray said they use bent metal pipes since ladder mesh is unavailable to us. That would probably be a good thing to use as well for frost covers. Jana, so excited you're here too. Somebody said there's a Nichols herb garden in Oregon. I bet they would have great tarragon seeds too. Glad you made it here, Faith and Hope. Nancy also does the breath holding method. Yeah, that works if you got to walk through any little gust of dust or whatever. I just hold my breath for a minute till I get out of it to clean air. Um, we already kind of talked to Stevie somewhere in the stream there about fitting two people into a tiny house. It we have had family visit before. It is pretty tight if they're all in the tiny house at once. I've had times where I slept on the couch, and like my brother and sister-in-law slept up in the loft. Last summer, my one sister and brother-in-law and their kids came to visit, but they were in the middle of summer, and so they brought their one big tent, and I set up my one big tent, and we all camped in the yard together. That was kind of fun. Um, let's see, share beans. We did talk about goats or sheep, probably not in the near future for sure. Um, Female Crusader said water steam canning. Check the amount of water needed due to size of jars and process time average between 2 to 3 inches of water. Yeah, with steam canning, with water bath canning, you can fill it up more. With steam canning, you're limited to that bottom tray amount, which does limit the longest you can something to being like 45 minutes long. But that works for almost everything. Well, I'd say everything that I'm not going to pressure can already. Ruth, we haven't got an elk yet this year. We're hoping to any day. Um, Cindy, man, I'm glad you like the non-clickbait too. I know there are people like, what are you doing to grow your channel? And I'm like, well, I'm sure I could do she grew 250 pounds of potatoes. You won't believe what she did next kind of titles. But I don't like that stuff. It does draw in more people, but I'm not trying to make a big channel. I'm trying to make useful information, teach skills that I've been blessed to be taught by others who know how to do them. And then sometimes do just the videos of the nature and beauty we're surrounded by. And hopefully I have stuff labeled accurately enough that if that's what you're interested in, you can find it. Glad, Kathy, that you're on Odyssey as well. But yeah, like I said, I need to figure out. I haven't found any way to do it. If somebody knows, is there some kind of software I can use that's either good and or preferably free where I can stream to more than one place at once? This is only the second time I've ever done a live stream in my life, so I'm still figuring out. Kathy, I know you've done a lot of live streams, so if you have a good suggestion of what you like to use to allow it to stream to more than one place, I'd love to hear about that. I'm just very much figuring this out. Hello to Alberta. Um, Several people have snow coming down. What is the best option? Manufactured house, off-grid cabin, or a tiny house if you're a single male? That's going to depend entirely on where you live, what your budget is, what your options are in that area, and what you want to do and what your goals are. I don't think I could answer that for any particular person. All those things have pros and cons, and it's just going to depend on a whole lot of other factors. So sorry, I don't know how to answer that. I'm glad the streaming quality is good compared to others. That's partly why I never tried to do any live streams before we lived here, because it would take me 12 to 24 hours to upload every single video I did because our internet connection was so minimal, just barely there. So yeah, I'm glad to hear that for you guys it is coming through pretty well, hopefully. Linda, yeah, I agree that growing up with the same kind of culture and expectation does bridge a lot of other gaps. Joel had a challenging gardening year in Montana, unusually cold and wet. Yeah, we had, I guess, a pretty cold and wet spring here too. And then I'm being distracted by all the birds flying over there on the feeder, flying past the windows. And then we had an extra hot and pretty dry summer, but hoping for more even weather next year. Do the chickens stop laying as much in the winter, Jules? Some breeds do. Icelandics, one of the reasons we specifically got those are because they do tend to lay well through the winter. We'll see what they do this winter. Last year was our adult hens' first winter laying, and they laid steadily with no let up all winter long, no artificial light, none of that, and it was great. This year, now our first generation of ladies is all a year and a half old, a little more than that. And we have our 6 new hens that are haven't quite started laying yet. I'm expecting to see them laying any day now, but hopefully they at least will lay really steadily through the winter, and we'll see what the other ladies do in their second year. But some breeds hardly lay at all in the winter. That is true. Sherry Honey, I've never found arrowheads on this property. I have found arrowheads at various places in the Wyoming mountains, not on this particular property. Yeah, Tolo Redding, Territorial Seed Company. They have they're another seed company I have ordered from as well. If you go to my blog, finance.blogspot.com, I have a whole video on, or a whole blog just on seed companies that are small and or local and or geared toward cold climates or high elevation or short growing seasons, all the kind of stuff that applies to me. So if you're in Florida, it's probably not the right list of seed companies for you. But if you just look up garden seeds or something, search on the chat, the blog, and you should find that one. And I have a whole list of companies I've found over the years. MI Gardeners up in Michigan, Mary's Heirloom Seeds, there's Snake River Seeds, and I do not remember all the names, but I have a list there of ones I've found over time. Let's see. Do I still use the composting toilet? Yep, we do. Got the one in the house right behind there in the bathroom. We actually, for the summer, had one out sitting in the edge of the woods by the creek. So if you were at that end of the property, you could use that. And we've got another bucket version one in Clay's shop. So if you're working in the shop, you can use it. So there's now 3 composting toilets on the property, and we don't ever plan to use anything else. Let's see here. Somebody talked about, because I don't turn the soil, the food you grow, and the eggs the chickens lay are super nutritious. Hopefully. I kind of talked about, do I miss the old house location? Robin, I'm very glad you found us again. Would I ever like to have a greenhouse so we can have tomatoes? Yes. Is anyone living in my previous tiny house location? Nope, nobody other than the wild critters. And as I mentioned, the property is for sale because the children of the folks that I was dealing with when I lived there are not interested in keeping it. So if you have about $60 million in spare change laying around somewhere, you could buy that property. Am I considering a high tunnel or a greenhouse, Jana? I don't know. We've talked about a lot of things. I definitely want some kind of like greenhouse sunroom on the south side of the house we're planning to build to help heat the house and be able to grow some stuff in there. We may also do some bigger detached greenhouse at some point, and we've talked about a lot of options. We haven't decided yet what we think would work best for that. Yay, I see people are still joining. Welcome, Jen. Ruth, will we show you how to process an elk if we get one? I hope you're doing well and feeling good today. Maybe. I've wanted to do a video of processing elk. The problem is it is a big project. And when you get one on the ground, it is to handle meat well. A lot of stuff needs done on a pretty specific time frame, and it takes at least both of us. And so, because running a camera to do videos, everything slows things down so much, you almost need one of you to be free just to do that. I've just never managed to do it. But maybe one of these years, maybe I'll get my little brother to help get Micah to help Clay with the project so that I can just run the camera. So maybe we'll get to do that. What plans do I have, Robin, for the beautiful tiny house once our tiny home is built? So once we build a small house, this will either, we're not sure yet what we'll do with it, but it will either become like the guest house where we can just have friends or family members or whatever stay in their own little place when they come over to visit, or we've considered doing some kind of Airbnb rental for some income, because I think some people might enjoy staying in a little off-grid tiny house looking at the mountains and getting woke up with roosters crowing. That wouldn't be everyone's cup of tea, but somebody might like that. Stevie Ray, how do I prioritize projects? Oh boy, I feel like every single day I have things that I want to get done that just I think I can get done in that day, and I don't. The last little bit has tended to be like, the first is the emergency things, like the garden has to be watered right now or everything's going to die. Or, the chickens have to be fed every day. Or I have to get the potatoes and beets and carrots out of the ground because it looks like, according to the weather, tomorrow it's going to freeze rock solid and not thaw for 8 months. Other than that, when we're not dealing with the urgent emergencies, we've been trying to kind of go through one at a time of just getting the garden in here because I wanted to keep growing food even while we were working things. That was a high priority. Then I probably got a little ahead of myself and we got chickens before we even had the chicken barn and yard built. So we got that done to put them in. Got Clay's shop done to put his tools in so that he has hopefully we'll have a kind of finished organized workshop to work out of to build our small home. I don't know. Yeah, I kind of do the things that are most urgent first, and that's about the stage of life we're at right now. Um, JR, glad you got here on your lunch break. Um, Tolo, could we use beetle kill pine to build a house? You could for some things. It's not a structural wood. It's not strong enough to like do your framing out of. Really, a lot of people use beetle kill pine because it has this beautiful like bluish purplish color in the woods in the wood grain when beetles kill a tree. I've seen people use it to do a beautiful like wall finish or something. Like I have these um this is just a pine siding, just not a beetle kill. You could do something like that. It's not a structural lumber that you could use for that. Margaret, glad to see you here. Um G Taylor, will we be able to expand the solar, provide enough for cooking or keep propane? Um yeah, I don't know if we'll I doubt we'll do much of a bigger solar setup. If it was up to me, I'd probably leave. We do have some. I've talked about that before. We did wire grid power into Clay's shop because he has some bigger tools and stuff that run well on that as long as it's available and relatively inexpensive, which is currently true in Wyoming. Neither one of us is comfortable relying on any of the basic, heating, cooking, water, those kinds of things relying on electricity. So we plan to always stick with composting toilets, our gravity-fed spring water, heating with wood, that kind of thing. If it was up to just me, I wouldn't even wire the house. I would just use power in the shop when I needed something with power and leave the house be. Clay would like to have it if it's an option and have other ways to do all the important things if not. So we'll see what we do. It might end up wired, but I don't know that I ever plan on putting on a lot bigger solar setup. I prefer to just keep the things we have to do with electricity very low. Midnight Run, yeah, grief is very individual. I think even watching my parents and siblings and so on handle losing a family member in the last year, definitely everybody deals with it differently, and I think it's important that we all give each other time and space. And just because somebody else is crying all the time or not crying at all or staying busy or doing nothing, I think it's important for us all to be patient, realize that we do all handle that differently, and not jump on each other for not dealing with it the same. Um, oh, I'm sorry, Paige and Neri, to hear you lost a brother as well. That is hard. Um, Stevie, how do I handle chicken illnesses? We haven't had any yet, other than we had a duck. It wasn't an illness; it was an injury when we had our one duck that survived the coon attack, but was missing part of the back of his head. I did not think he was going to make it, but he did. Um, all I did was spray some like iodine solution onto the back of his head because he was so stressed out. Picking him up or handling him seemed to make him more upset. So I did that as a general disinfectant and let him be and gave him plenty of food and water and rest and space, and he made it. The only other, it's not an illness, it would have been an injury. We had a couple of our roosters broke a toe. I don't know if it was fighting with each other or what. Again, I just kept an eye on it. It seemed to heal up. They limped for a bit and it healed up. And one of them's got a toe that's a little cockeyed now, but it doesn't seem to bother him in the least. So we haven't had any to deal with. Glad you were here, Marianne. Sorry you had to go. I know this has gone on really, really long. I can't believe anybody's still here, and there's still 245 of you. That is great. Yeah, Faith and Hope grosbeaks are beautiful. And we have evening grosbeaks and pine grosbeaks and black-headed grosbeaks. And I think one other I'm blanking on at the moment, all live in this area. Hi from New York City, Woodhound. Yeah, that's true. Chicken Little and the Sky is Falling is a favorite book. Chickens don't like things falling on their heads. I've noticed that. They'll come out when it's like 30 below if the sun's out, but they like to stay inside when there's stuff falling out of the sky. J.R. Kreiner, I'm glad I got your last name right. I'm sure I butchered quite a few other people's. Um, yeah, Clay probably could build a hand crank clothes washer, but he's got lots of other things to build, and some of the expensive parts of it would be getting a nice stainless steel manufactured bin, and manufacturing stainless steel is not his kind of thing. So I think it may make more sense to buy something like that. Yes, so I do know Amish folks who use a gas powered washing machine. I'd just like to use the hand cranked one. That'd be my preference. And like I said, it's on the wish list. We'll get it someday. Um, yeah, DIY house and farm. Yeah, it has been. I mean, even if things are a little crowded, not everything's perfect. It's been really nice that we did have this tiny house where we could just move in and live out of this while getting other things built on the property. Oh dear, I see. I should have. I know I should have had you as a admin going, Kathy, to get rid of the spam bots there. Um, does Clay still caretake old home location? Yes, he is still working for several people near where I used to live. So at the moment, we don't have as much time together as we'd like. We spend a lot of time on the phone every day, and because he is either at work or on call 24/7, and that kind of sucks right now. But anyway, we get to spend all the time together that we can, and we talk a whole lot when we're not in the same place. Rock Lover says I could have a go at forcing rhubarb over the winter. I've seen that. I guess it's just never really interested me. Maybe it's something I'd play around with if I have free time and we had a root cellar to do it in. Um, oh, Lauren likes my mug. This was a gift, actually. It's handmade. No, I can't tip it. I've still got tea in there. Somebody's got their signature on the bottom by a guy who I used to know from when I was waiting tables. When I quit that job, he gave it to me as a going away gift, and it's my favorite mug, and I use it all the time. Thanks for all the kind comments. Hi to Switzerland. Um, somebody asks about that particular stabby thing people are doing. No, I had a very bad reaction to one when I was an infant many years ago. I will never get another one of any kind. Are my raised beds going to get higher as my back gets older? Yes. Probably the ones that I have will stay the same. I doubt I'll redo them because they do work well over time. Like I mentioned, if we get our small house built, I would like to build some bigger garden beds kind of right beside it, which I can't put them right beside it now because they'd be in the way of doing the building. But I would like to make them almost waist height, I'm hoping, so that as we age, I'd be able to just like sit on the edge and work without having to do any bending over at all. And then maybe I'd transform my current garden into more of like an herb and flower bed and pollinator garden and medicinal stuff and all that kind of stuff that is more just perennial stuff that just lives in there and requires less tending. That's all somewhere years down the road, but that is a hope. Carolyn, how many square feet are we thinking with the new house? Somewhere 5-ish, 6-ish hundred square feet, which is big compared to 160, but I guess small compared to a lot of things. B. Lambert, was the chicken coop our own design? Yeah, it was pretty much Clay's design. It was kind of based on what the chickens needed, what secondhand materials we had that we could use without buying it. We did have to buy some new material, but with buying as little new material as possible and so on. I'm sure that folks in Canada and Alaska have some great designs as well. Rocket scientists, are we having any children? Nope. Joey, yes. Clay has been hunting. No luck so far. Hello to Beth in California. Yeah, mountain climates are probably similar just about everywhere. Exploring alternatives, Major Seventh. That is a different channel. If you were that's not the one that has the living tiny legally, but Exploring Alternatives is another great channel with lots of interesting interviews with folks. Beth, that's interesting to know that Berkeley. Oh, why did my comments just jumped here and I don't know where it went. Sorry guys. I don't know if there's a way to keep it from jumping like that. But anyway, she was saying that Berkeley has tiny houses legal there now. There, I found it again. That's good to know. California's not an area I've ever looked at. I know there are more areas that I'm not personally aware of. Damagram, a 4-square house. That's a good description. That's pretty much what we're planning on. Let's see here. How does Clay fit in the tiny shower? Not very well. It's really snug, even for me. At the moment, he often showers in his little caretaker cabin when he's at work, and so that works. That's another thing. The fact that he is gone so much is partly what has made the tiny house work out and not be so overcrowded right now. To get a little bigger place built. Hi, Richie in Florida, and Sue in the UK, and Book Gal from Colombia, and Beth in California, and Yorkshire. I just can't believe how many people are here from all over the world. Nottingham, England, Niagara Falls. Thanks. I do think that calendar is pretty. Paige and Nori, thanks for reporting comments. Yeah, I need to figure out how to have Kathy or somebody moderating from the start. I should have paid more attention to that. I'm still figuring out how to do this thing. Where, Jen, will we build the house on the property? Will the tiny house stay put? Yes. That's partly why the tiny house, as you see me walk back and forth, is so far right now from the shop, because we knew from the start we were going to plan to build something else eventually. And so the little house would end up closer to the shop and the bird barn and the creek and all that stuff, to make that more convenient, and to also give guests, or if we ever rent it or something, a little more privacy with having the tiny house down here on the other side of the orchard, which will hopefully one day actually look like substantial trees. They look pretty little right now, but they're growing. So yeah, it would be kind of at the other end of the property. So each house would have a little privacy from each other. Robin, you can find all nearly 800 something videos on Odyssey as well. And then I'm pretty active on, I'd say MeWe mostly, MeWe.com. It operates very much like Facebook, except no censorship and no algorithms, no ads. So you just see the things in chronological order from the people you want to follow. If you don't want to see something, then just say you don't want to follow it. But I'm active there, usually a post or two every single day about something that's going on here. So if you want to follow along there, you get to see lots of that. Oh, more cooking videos, Lorraine. Hopefully in the winter is usually when I get to them. In the summer, I'm just so busy I barely have time to cook, much less film it. SkyTech Bits, what time is dark there now? Just after 5 in South Carolina. Yeah, I guess I didn't look really quite when it got dark. I think it's a little before 5 here now, and by the shortest day of the year, it's usually dark about 4 o'clock here in the mountains. SkyTech, how's the stream? Is it low again this year? Yes, it was low, but it didn't go dry like it did last year. That's Burley moaning. I think he's bored with me. Come up here, baby. Do you want to say hi to everyone? Yeah, come up here. Come up here. You want to say hi? You got to get up tall enough that the camera can see you. Oh, yes. There. Now everyone can see you. Are you bored with sleeping on my feet? Do you want to go outside? Hang on. Let me let him out. He is very patient with me doing things on the computer and talking to people on cameras and screens and stuff. Amanda, you have a ranch and greenhouses. That sounds awesome. Sounds very lovely. Ruth Sanders, a small fishing village in New South Wales, Australia. Hi in Australia. Yeah, I know live streams get spammed and trolled. And yes, Beth, that is a good point. I need to figure out how to, I guess, start a few minutes earlier and maybe be in contact with a couple of you reliable people to run as moderators on this. Hi, in Washington. Yeah, I'm glad that I assume most of you guys that hang out here regularly aren't into the clickbaity videos, because that's not really what I do. Yeah, an Airbnb might be cool. From Australia, you'd love to stay in the tiny house. David, no permit for gray water system. There is a requirement for a septic permit in Wyoming if you're going to install a septic system, but to the best of my knowledge and research, there's no requirement in our area for irrigating clean gray water into your ground. Hi in England. Yes, so it's been a little rough year for both of our families with deaths in the family. David Patton, Um, we said we're over 600 feet. Yes, or sorry, 6,000 feet in elevation. Both places, both the clearing and where we are now, are actually very similar elevations. They're in different mountain valleys in Wyoming. And you have to go down and then up again to get between them, but they are very similar elevation. No, we did not end up at a lower elevation. And it's still cold and snowy. Um, Glad I could get to any most of the questions. Rocket scientist, how old is Burley? He turned 4 this summer, so he's a little bit over 4 years old. Um, oh, and there my comments just jumped again. Sorry, David, Patton, that you lost a cousin last year. Thank you for the kind thoughts. Yeah, Lenora, I'm not really into trying to sell stuff, but people are like, oh, you should do t-shirts, you should do hats, you should do, I don't know. I mean, all those things would probably be great ways to make money. I don't know. I'm even torn about like selling copies of a calendar. Because I don't like to collect stuff. I don't wear t-shirts with words on them ever myself. Just not my thing. I don't wear hats. I hate things touching my head. Unless it's the very, very bitterest windy cold. So yeah, I try to just, if there's something I actually like, I mean, like I'd tell you where to go buy a mug like this if I knew of a place to go buy one, but it was handmade. If there's a product I actually have found useful for years, I try to tell people, why I find it useful, but selling stuff isn't the point of what I do. Hi in North Central Wisconsin, Rhonda. Hi from Ireland. Alice, can I do anything to save my cabbage if they're attacked again? Probably not if I have the same kind of flea beetle infestation we had this year. There was just billions of them around. Hopefully that was just a kind of a plague year. Like there's sometimes, a year where there's all the locusts or all the cicadas or something, and that won't happen again next year. Linda, possible outdoor shower for Clay. I did shower in the woods a few times. The first summer when I was, or the first little bit when I hadn't emptied stuff out of the shower here yet to start using, just with the garden hose, and that was a cold shower after dark in the edge of the woods. We don't have much of the year though where it's very warm here to make outdoor showers very comfortable. I know some people are probably tougher than Clay and I'm sure there's somebody in Alaska who showers outdoor year round or something, but we kind of like the comfort of being inside. Hi in British Columbia, Louisiana, Australia, Madeira, North Carolina. Thanks for all the kind comments and all of that stuff. Yeah, you guys are just awesome. Only a couple. Oh, hi there, little sister. Hi to Pennsylvania. Anyway, okay, I don't see. Now we're 2 hours and 15 minutes here. This is crazy. And we still have almost 248, 47 people hanging out. I don't see any more questions. If anyone's got another one, throw it in there. Hopefully that answers all of the questions in the last little bit that I didn't get around to writing answers to. I have got to go get some other things done today, and the sun is starting to come out. It's beautiful and snowy, and I will see you all next time. Thanks so much for being here, and glad that it worked and I didn't have too many technical difficulties, and hopefully we'll get things figured out even a little smoother next time. You guys have a lovely day, and I am going to sign off. Oh, a peek out the window. Okay, let me see if I can do this without dropping the computer. I don't know how well the camera is going to see. Well, that's looking directly into the sun. That might not be so good. Let me see if I can look out. Now I'm walking away from my microphone, so the sound's going to be terrible. How about, well, focus. There's looking out the solar panels and across the snowy field. And of course, now that I picked the camera up, there's no birds on the feeder. There was back and forth most of the time I've been talking to you guys. How did Kimberly had the battle with the grass work out? That's still an ongoing battle, getting rid of the amount of quackgrass we have here. Kelly, have I planted Egyptian walking onions? No, I should probably try at some point. Okay, I think that's everybody. You guys have a lovely day. Thanks so much for being here, and enjoy winter or fall or whatever you've got outside of your windows.